Hey guys, this is Frank Yecker, and you're listening to Submission Radio.
Hey, this is Rich Franklin.
What's up, everybody? This is Chris Lieben. This is Diego Sanchez. Randy Couture.
Alistair Overeem.
Hi, this is Stephen Bonner.
This is Don Fry.
Hey, I'm Phil, Mr. Wonderful Davis.
TJ Dillashaw.
You're listening to Submission Radio.
Submission Radio. Submission Radio.
Submission Radio.
You're listening to Submission Radio.
Welcome to Submission Radio, episode 142. It's Monday, the 9th of October. A little bit of a sneaky earlier time for Submission Radio to come at you this week. Dennis Grove here with Kasper Rosalowski. It's sunny outside, Kasper. I haven't seen any people blow over today. An unusual day here in Melbourne.
Yeah, pretty unusual. Normally I see a lot of people blowing over with the ghastly winds, but not yet. So consider that a blessing. And what better blessing than early Submission Radio and some sexy guests coming at you straight into the earbuds. We got Johny Hendricks returning to the program. I'm really pumped to get Johnny on. He's fighting at UFC 217. He's fighting Paulo Borrachinha. A lot of hype behind that fight. A lot of hype behind Paulo Borrachinha. But I think there should be a lot of hype behind Johnny Hendricks because he has officially moved to the Jackson Winklejohn camp, and I've been wanting to speak to the man to find out why the move, why now, and what has it been like. So Johnny Hendricks is on the program getting the hot scoop. Stephen Wonderboy Thompson, a lot of fun every time he comes on the show. Also fighting UFC 217, facing Jorge Masvidal in a very, very fan-friendly, sexy, exciting fight. So we got him returning to talk about a whole bunch of things, and of course, I'm thrilled about this one. We were supposed to have him twice, not once, but twice during the Mayweather-McGregor lineup. It didn't happen for various reasons. Owen Roddy finally coming back to Submission Radio. You all know him as Conor McGregor's striking coach, longtime striking coach. Been training Conor McGregor for over 10 years. He finally returns to Submission Radio to talk about a whole bunch of things. We're going to talk to him about UFC 216, Tony Ferguson winning, what that means for Conor McGregor, this Nate Diaz trilogy, and a whole bunch of other things. It is a stacked show, and that's not all. We got more guests, don't we, Dennis?
That's right. A friend of the program, severe MMA superstar Sean Seheehan, coming onto the show to talk about UFC 216. A lot of stuff to talk about there. Well, let's really go through this Tony Ferguson, Kevin Lee fight, also the co-main event. Demetrious Johnson putting on an amazing finish to another great performance. And Fabricio Werdum, is he hot? Is he not? After taking this fight last minute, switching opponents. Where's he at on the hot or not scale? Find out later on the show. And also, this weekend, we saw a press conference between GSP and Michael Bisping. What did we think of it? What was our reaction? We won't tell you now. We're holding our lips tight until the end of the program. So stick around because there's a lot of fun stuff to talk about, break down, and analyze. But before we get to that, and even the first guest, just a quick reminder from you guys, if you are listening on YouTube, please give us your thoughts in the comment sections below. We want to hear your thoughts on a whole bunch of topics. What did you think about UFC 216? What did you think about our comments later on in the program? What do you think about Sean? Is he a sexy man? Put it all underneath there. Me and Kasper, are we sexy as well? Are we spicy, as Kasper says? Chuck it down there. We love to hear your input. Also, jump on Twitter and follow us on Twitter at SubmissionAUS. Our DMs are open, so slide right in there. We love to hear from you guys. We don't have to follow you for you guys to message us. We've been getting a lot of really nice messages from a bunch of different listeners. We love hearing from you guys. Don't feel shy. Come on down. Send us a message. Have a bit of a chat on Facebook, facebook.com/SubmissionRadioAUS. Give us a like. Have you liked us yet? Why not? What are you doing? Oh, you're going through a difficult time in your life and you don't have any time to do it? Forget about that time. Like the page. That's the most important thing. Jump on, like our page. Jump on Facebook. Give us a comment. Give us a like. Again, you can message us through the Facebook page as well. We get a lot of really lovely comments through the Facebook page. And also, a lot of really great people comment underneath our posts. Me and Kasper actually run both of those pages ourselves. No social media people here at Submission Radio. So when we respond. Sometimes in the middle of the night, sometimes drunk, sometimes not knowing where we are, but you always respond somehow. There's a few gift responses lately on the Submission Radio Facebook page. Fun times. Make sure to like us. And also review. We love the iTunes review cast. We always get a lot of fun iTunes reviews. We always read them personally. Sometimes we print them up and hang them near the toilet. That's where we do most of our reading. If there's a nice magazine rack in a toilet, that's where I read. I don't believe in libraries. I believe that there should be magazine racks in schools and toilets because kids need to learn how to read. So make sure to send us through those reviews. That has nothing to do with anything, but make sure to send them through because we love to hear from you guys. But Cass, without further ado, it's a sexy lineup. We have our first guest on. Before we jump to the first guest, just quickly, Casper's got him on the line. He's like, all right, here we go. I'm about to introduce him. What
I'm ready.
the fuck are you doing? But just quickly, back to our midweek format from next week. So back to that midweek format. Look out for us midweek like usual. We're back, baby. We're better than ever. We'll be back midweek. So look out for us on iTunes or wherever you listen to on the program, YouTube, wherever you go. But Cass, like I said, sexy lineup, big show. You've got our first guest on the line and you're about to introduce him.
All right, guys. Our next guest is a former UFC welterweight champion who is now fighting at middleweight and taking on the very dangerous Paulo Borrachinha at the ultra-stacked UFC 217. He is the big rig himself. Johny Hendricks, welcome back to Submission Radio. How are you today?
I'm doing great. You?
Well, we're doing very well, and thank you so much for taking the time for coming onto the program, because the big news is that we've seen you've made the big leap over to Jackson Winklejohns for your training camp. Of course, this is significant because for a while now you've been your own sort of training camps and stayed away from the big camps. So tell us, Johnny, how's the move been, and how have you enjoyed it so far?
No, I loved it, and I do love it. I think it's been... I want to do it on, I thought here in Texas, we have partners, but sometimes it's hard to get partners, where at Jackson's, it's, you have partners upon partners, and people who want to train nonstop. And that's, once I showed up, they opened their arms to me and we just started working. And that's sort of what I need. I need people that are going to push me. And my coaches push me here, but I need the people as well. I need the partners. And it's so tough to beat a place like that when it comes to how many people they have. And not only that, but how many big guys they have that I'm able to work out with. The first day I showed up, I sparred 6 different people, and there's still 4 people that wanted to go, but class was over. So it's sort of a different vibe.
Yeah, that's great. That's very encouraging. Just wondering, why now? Of all the times, obviously, you're talking about the partners, but when did you first decide that, look, I'm not getting the right partners or I'm not getting enough partners? When did this sort of tick over in your mind, and when did you make this big decision?
Well, you know what? It started about a year and a half ago. It just turned hard to get partners to come in and train. I could find boxers, but MMA is a little bit different than boxing. The distance, and where to move your head, and those kind of things, and where you're safe and where you're not, because you can throw kicks. And after that last fight, that was sort of the straw that I was just like, you know what? I got to get people. I got to get more than just one look. And my coach was telling me, hey, go try a couple of camps out. And, we talked to Winklejohn, and he said, sure, come on out, try it out. And I did. And after the first day, I was like, I knew that's where from here on out, that's where I'll be training. Let's just say that. Now I'm going to still train here in Texas because I can't leave my family for that long, right? But I plan on doing majority of my camp out in New Mexico.
And I mean, obviously very difficult to prepare for fights if you don't have the proper training partners. If you did go to Jackson Winklejohns, a few fights ago, do you think it would have had a big effect on your last few performances? Do you think it would have been a little bit of a different Johny Hendricks that we would have seen?
Oh yeah. Just because, working with Jackson for one has been, working with Winklejohn. I've been doing, you're sitting there, you're playing, you're doing stuff. And whenever you're doing these things, having somebody who understands the MMA game, and not only that, but just thinking of how many people has he worked with, that he's sort of, I feel like it's time for me to rebuild my career. And after talking to Jackson and Winklejohn, we have a pretty solid game plan that I sort of wanted to try to build. I wanted to do it, but I didn't know how, because we didn't have the partners to push me. Does that make sense? And without getting too much into what we're working on, but they saw me, they looked at me, and they said, "This is what we can make you." And I said, "Let's do it."
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it sounds exactly what you want to hear. Was there any consideration to go to any other big camps? I mean, these days there's so many. There's ATT, there's AKA, there's King's MMA. Why specifically Jackson Winklejohns? Was it their reputation? Was it sort of a geographical convenience? What ultimately made you want to go there? And did you try any others, or did you go straight to Jackson's?
No, I didn't try any others. I thought about a couple of other ones, but
which ones? Which ones were you thinking about?
The Black Zillions and also AKA.
Mm-hmm.
But, I wanted to try Jackson's because one, it's the closest. And two, you look at what they've made, they've had a lot of guys. And not only that, but I've also been on the other side of Jackson and Winklejohn.
Yeah.
So I sort of understand, I even told this about, whenever I was talking to them. One of the main reasons why I went there before anything else, because I listen whenever I'm fighting. I also listen, right? And I listen to what they're saying to their fighters, and I'm going, man, quit saying that, because I understand what you're trying to do. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
I see what you see, and now I'm going to have to counter that instead of just playing the regular game. And so I know what he can possibly do with me, and I'm willing to throw all my eggs in that basket. That's how much I believe in what he wants from me.
And obviously, so many big stars and great fighters coming from that gym. You've actually got, a past opponent and Carlos Condit there as well. What's it like being at the gym for you in terms of being around all these people, and how has it been being around Carlos and some of these other guys that you've known for a really long time in terms of fighters?
You know what? It's been great. This whole camp. I've been. I really don't go back, and Cowboys let me stay at his place.
Whoa.
Which is outside of town, but realistically, I'm not doing most of the time. I've been sitting there talking, listening to other fighters, sort of what they want to push me as well, and that's what's exciting, is that it's not only me that I'm thinking about, it's also those other guys. They want to see me do good because that's what they want.
Well, now that you brought it up, we have to find out, because we know Cowboy gets up to some pretty wild activities, some extreme sports. What's it like staying at his house?
It was fun. I love Cowboy. We've known each other for about 4 years now, and we're both active. And what I mean by that is, after training, we always go and, he's always doing something. I'm always doing something at my house. He never sits still, and that's the same way it was out there. It was sort of relaxing to get to train and do things with him, because that's exactly how I like to train as well.
Do you guys do a whole lot of extreme activities or extreme sports? I mean, last time we spoke to him, he was going, I think, parachuting or something. Any crazy things that you guys have done by the lake or anything?
We haven't done anything by the lake because it's only 70 degrees right there, and at night it's 40 something. He said whenever the summer comes, we'll be hitting the lake. So more than anything, I've just been super excited about the whole process. I can't stress enough how the reason why it's hard to go to new gyms is because you're worried about what happens, right? You're worried about this and that and everything else. But the way that whenever I walked into that gym, the way it sort of went down is I'm super excited. That's why I've already said it, and I already told them on the second day. I said I'm coming back. I'm going to be here. This is going to be my camp, from here on out.
Well, it's good timing because you do have a very exciting fight, UFC 217. You take on a very dangerous Paulo Borrachinha. What was your reaction when you got him, and did you know much about him before you were scheduled to fight him?
No, they said, would you like to fight him? I said, sure. I don't know who he is. And that's just the way that it is that I'm not going to shy away from, because they say he's dangerous. He's never been tested, right? I'm going to test him. One thing I'm going to do is, I've seen most of his fights. He likes to bully people and sort of push them back. I'm not that type of fighter. So I'm sort of excited to see if he really sticks to what he's done in the past. That's where I do my best offense, is when a guy wants to come forward. That's one thing I think also with Jackson being there, I have opponents that move away from me, not just my boxing coach, right? I have opponents that are going to pressure me and move away. So I'm figuring out that style as well as people, in my last couple of fights, people, they don't want to get into a fist fight with me. They want to pick their shots. Well, this guy, if he wants to try to bully me like that, I'm so excited. For one, where I'm training at, that boosts my confidence. Two, the people that I'm training with is boosting my confidence. And three is that I know that style very well. It could be a short night for him if he wants to try to pressure me like that.
Is there sort of an opponent that you can compare him to? You say you know that style very well. Do you feel like there's someone that you faced before?
Yeah, Robbie Lawler.
Yeah.
Robbie Lawler. I mean, let's be honest. He's that type of fighter. He's a guy that's going to come forward and he's going to throw heavy hands. That's really what he is going to do. He's going to corral you. He's trying to get you to the cage. As soon as he does that, he's going to unleash. And that's sort of the same thing that Robbie does. He's going to throw power in the open, but he's also going to push you, get you to where he knows he can throw offense, because you're in a little bit of dangerous area, right? You have to get off the cage. So I've been down that road more than once, and I'm really excited for November 4th.
And there's a lot of things to be excited about in terms of that card, but obviously Paulo's got, he's undefeated, he's got first round finishes in all but one of his fights and has a lot of hype around him. So when you kind of look at this matchmaking and him being a young prospect, do you kind of get that feeling or that sense that the UFC is kind of trying to use you to build his name in this fight?
Or crush his name? It's however you want to look at it. Okay? You pick the poise. But one thing that Jackson has done for me, it's something that I haven't done in a very long time, is fight back. Had to bite down on the mouthpiece and fight back. And I got that. I'm getting that in New Mexico at Jackson Wings. That's one thing that I can say they're bringing it back out of me, and that's really what's important for me, is to get that back.
Well, it's great to see that obviously, you've got your confidence back, you've got a great team and great people around you. Just have to touch on this, Johnny. Obviously, in the last fight, the weight cutting and making weight didn't go your way, but you were kind enough to speak to us immediately afterwards, where you explained that you're actually really sick leading into the fight, something that a lot of people didn't know. How are you sort of feeling about the weight heading into this one? And is there anything new that you'll be doing, or do you feel like you'll be fine as long as there's no sickness or anything like that this time?
No, I've been working with the UFC nutritionist, so I'm working with people. I'm working with them. My weights, I'm going to try to hit under 200 this week, and then I'll be 3 weeks out from weigh-ins, having to lose. By the time I get there, my goal is to be right around 195, so he has an easy time with me. And those are all easy things to do. I've been eating a lot, been doing a lot of things differently, been running more, things that I'm not relying on other people about. Even though I'm working with the UFC on the nutrition side, I'm really on my own in a theory, right? Because I'm making sure that I do it. I've relied on other people, and it's time for me to say, hey, no, if I miss weight, it's because of me. And that's what sucks too, is that, these people, you get sick, you don't lose weight when you get sick. Your body holds on to everything. And not only that, but, I was in good shape going into that fight, and it looked like I didn't train at all. If you look at my movement aspect, from the last fight to that fight, those are, I was wearing lead feet. And when I rewatched that, I'm like, I'm not moving at all. I'm not advancing what I want to do. I'm not closing the distance the way that I need to. And those are also things that I'm working on as well, at Jackson. I'm tired of talking. I just want to fight. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's been that type of camp. And, with a couple more weeks under my belt and the future that I see myself after talking with those guys and my coach, is really, the sky's the limit, in my mind, right? It's the fact that now, that's one of the things that Jackson and Wink looked at me and said, what do you want? I said, I want to be the best I can be, better than I was. I know I still have it in me. Can I get pushed there? And they both looked at me and smiled and said, we can push you there. Because here in Texas, I can't get pushed there, because if I spar with you once, you might not come back again. Mm-hmm. If I do something, if we roll together, you might not come back again. And that's sort of the gist that I'm in. But out there, you push somebody, guess what? They're going to push back. And then I'm going, oh, okay, I get to raise my level, and then they try to raise theirs, and then let's see who gets crumbled underneath the other person's level, right? The other person's mind that wants to fight. And that's one thing that I was, after the first day, I just looked at myself and said, yeah, this is what I needed. And, my wife, she pretty much said, that's what you need. If you think that's where the best training is, then stay there and do your thing. And, we'll move forward from there.
And also the fact that you'll be fighting at the iconic Madison Square Garden. Is this a bit of a milestone in your career? And what does it mean for you to be fighting at MSG?
It's been, I've wanted to hit every famous spot that people have fought in. And I've been in some big time shows, but to be in Madison Square Garden finally, I'm super excited. I remember watching, one of my favorites is Rocky Marciano, and he's fought there. Tyson, Holyfield, all these guys that I grew up watching fight. They've been there. They've done that. And to be able to step into that arena as a fighter, as a competitor, I'm just super excited. Of course, it doesn't matter whenever I'm fighting at. It doesn't matter where I'm fighting at, but the lead up is giving me a little bit of energy as well. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. I want to go out there and perform my best in that arena.
Yeah, and what better way to return, obviously, on a massive stack card like UFC 217, and obviously a great main event, featuring George St. Pierre, a guy that you know very well. Are you sort of excited to see the return of GSP later on, that night at UFC 217? Do you think you'll watch that fight?
I haven't even thought about it. Realistically, all I've been thinking about is myself, and no other card. To be honest with you, I try to do it the best I can, but actually this fight, I have done that. I don't know who else is fighting on that card. I don't care who else is fighting on that card. All I care about is myself and after that, then I can move forward.
Mm-hmm. Well, you're in for a pleasant surprise because there's a lot of fun fights on the card. As we let you go, Johnny, we want a prediction. UFC 217, Madison Square Garden. How do you see yourself winning?
You know what? I think y'all are going to be surprised with some of the stuff that I don't. You know, it could go multiple ways. It really could. You know, working with Jackson and Wink, they've brought out a couple of things that y'all aren't. For one, you've never seen. Mm-hmm. Two, that y'all are going to be excited to see again. And that's why I'm excited to fight. I'm excited to get in there and use these tools that have been they've been lost for a while.
Well, there you go, guys. I mean, we were already excited, but now we're even more excited. Johny Hendricks revitalized, training at, obviously, the world-famous Jackson Winkle-Johns. You have to make sure to say hi to Tyson Pedro in the gym. Johnny, if you haven't already, he's a fellow Aussie and a really nice guy. Guys, don't forget to follow Johnny on Twitter at Johny Hendricks and Instagram. Of course, he's fighting Paulo Borrachinha at UFC 217 on November 4th in the iconic MSG Arena. Johnny, as always, pleasure chatting to you, and thank you so much for giving us the update. Appreciate it.
Hey, thank you, and y'all have a wonderful day.
This is Chael Sonnen, and you are listening to Submission Radio.
All right, guys. Our next guest is loved for his ninja skills and for being one of the nicest guys in the game. He's making his return to the packed UFC 217. He takes on Jorge Masvidal in a super exciting fight. Fans can't wait to see. It's a pleasure to welcome Stephen Wonderboy Thompson back to Submission Radio, live from a wedding. Stephen, welcome back to the program.
Thank you, man. Been working on my ninja skills, man.
Yeah. Absolutely. And may I just ask, whose wedding are you at, and how are you crazy enough to take an interview, or kind enough, I should say, to take an interview with us while you're at a wedding? You're not like in the best man's party or anything, are you?
No, not at all. Actually, it's one of my brother's football buddies.
Wow.
My brother's wife had another wedding to go to, so I'm pretty much his date for the weekend. So he invited me. We're here. So it's all good, my friend. And I always like hanging out with you guys and talking with y'all. So it's all good, brother.
Well, we also noticed on Instagram you've been spending a little bit of time at some modeling events, some big fashion events. And we know a chiseled jaw is one of Wonderboy's many qualities. So what was it like? And does this mean we might be seeing you doing modeling as well?
Yeah, you know, I was actually in New York City for UFC 205 with Chris Weidman. We did a photo shoot for Gotham magazine, and there was people there with the largest modeling company in the world called IMG. They asked me if I would like to do some modeling. I was like, you know what? I'm 34 years old, not really sure what you're going to do with me, but why not? Sure. So I literally just signed with them about 2 months ago. They brought me out to Fashion Week in New York City a few weeks ago, and it's a huge, it's different, different in the spectrum from fighting to fashion. To be honest with you, I have no idea what I'm doing. I'm just along for the ride. So it's a lot of fun.
What are you expecting from this, Stephen? It's funny how you mentioned the Gotham shoot, because whenever we go on Getty Images to use images like for this interview and for thumbnails, we see there's like a whole bunch of pictures of you and Chris Weidman, and it's, obviously a cut above the usual images that you see for UFC fighters. But like, what are you expecting from this? Is this something you're hoping to do sort of every few months? Can you make some serious money out of it? What are you hoping for here?
Yeah, it's just something that the UFC and MMA has kind of dropped into my lap, to be honest with you, through the fighting, just a different revenue, along with, doing some analyzing with Fox. It's just something different, something to kind of dabble in and to kind of, have fun with when I don't have a fight coming up. So yeah, man, I mean, a lot of guys can make some really good money through modeling. And so, to be honest with you, I've never done it before, and it just sounds like a lot of fun, and it's just something new to do, something different. Like I said before, it's just totally different in the spectrum, going from fighting to fashion. But to be honest with you, it's kind of in one and the same. I mean, in the UFC, you got some guys like Conor McGregor, who's kind of molded those two together, the fighting and the fashion. He's got such a really cool persona when it comes to fashion. I mean, he's sponsored by Gucci and all these other companies. And so you're starting to see that a little bit more in the UFC. You got Alan Jabon, who's also modeling as well. So I was like, sure, man, why not? Let's do this.
And of course, when one becomes a model, they must learn the basics. So the big question here is, how many times have you watched Zoolander to get that blue steel look up to scratch?
Oh man, I've been working on it, man. I've been working on it. They told me, hey, you got to work on that blue steel look. I don't even know what that means, but I've been doing something in it. Hopefully it works. But had my first photo shoot a week ago with a guy named Bruce Weber, who's one of the top photographers in the world, and it was a lot of fun, very interesting. Of course, in the fashion industry, they like to try and push the limits a little bit. They like to, of course, the less that you wear, the better off the picture's going to be. Of course, I'm used to wearing practically nothing in the cage anyway. So,
this wasn't a nude shoot, was it, Steven?
No. Definitely can't do that. I got 600 kids back home watching every move I make. I can't be doing some nudes, but, I had to say no to that.
Yeah. Oh, well, at least they're offered. I mean, shit. I wish we would get offered, nude shoots. I'd take it as a compliment. Before we talk fighting, obviously you were also on the set of Jurassic Park 2. Talk to us about that. What was it like being on the set? And obviously Chris Pratt, we know he's obviously a big MMA fan. He was, big into wrestling in college. Did you get a chance to speak to him? And what was that all like?
I wish that it was literally directly after the entire cast had went home. So we were there in Hawaii for vacation, actually. Yeah, no, I would love to meet Miss Chris Pratt. I'm a huge fan of him. I love his movies. He's a very funny guy, but didn't get to meet him. But we were actually on set of Jurassic Park 2. I'm a huge Jurassic Park fan, being in theaters for the very first Jurassic Park back in the early 90s. And so it was cool to actually be on set. It was actually in Hawaii, in Honolulu. And man, it's a beautiful place. And not only did they do Jurassic Park 2, they did the very Jurassic World 2, but they did the very first Jurassic Park there. They did Godzilla. They did all kinds of other movie sets on this site. So it was cool to actually go around and tour the island and see. And I can kind of go back and picture the movie and remember, what I'm seeing actually in real life and seeing that in the movie. So it was cool actually being there. So it was a lot of fun.
Were you able to get into the producer's ear and to maybe include a karate dinosaur in the sequel to spice things up a little bit and maybe bring in a few bucks at the box office?
Right. I said, listen, man, you need somebody out there to roundhouse one of these dinosaurs in the face, at least once. I'm your guy, put me in there. So he wasn't having it. He was like, get out of here. I don't even know who you are. So don't talk to me.
And then you roundhouse him in the head, and then he got you away anyway. That's the way that story ends, right? Al, let's talk.
I did. And as soon as he said that, I poked him. I didn't even bother roundhouse you. I just poked him in the eye. That was it. Well,
that's nice. All right. Before we even talk about your fight, obviously UFC 217, just want to get your sort of read on the division because welterweight's kind of booming. It always has been, but you got all these new guys. There's no real clear-cut contender for Tyron Woodley. You got Robbie Lawler in the mix, but then you got RDA, and he's making his presence felt. And now Carlos Condit is returning. He's fighting Neil Magny. Obviously, Condit being a guy that, you wanted to fight for a while. You got Masvidal instead. But in your opinion, where does he fit in? Condit coming back after this time and also RDA.
RDA, of course, he was the champion in the 155 division. He's moved up to 170, but he's a huge name. So, he's a phenomenal fighter. He's been doing well in the 170 division. Beating Saffordine, which I was there actually ring cage side watching that fight, which is very impressive. And of course, his last win. So, I'm pretty sure he's ranked pretty high right now in the top 5 or 6. So it's really cool to see where he's, and this is what makes the 170 division so exciting because you don't know what's going to happen. And it's kind of up in the air right now. Me and Robbie Lawler going back and forth with the number one seed. I'm number 1 seed, and he's number 1 seed, and we're both number 1 seed, and he's back to number 1 seed. And you got all these, ridiculous fighters coming up. You got Mon Perry doing work, finishing dudes in the 170 division. You got Carlos Condit coming back, fighting Neil Magny. And of course, Robbie Lawler, who's a monster, coming over a win off of, Cowboy Cerrone. So, it's very exciting is right now in the 170 division. So, man, I got a bunch of guys, a lot of studying to do because I could be facing any one of these guys in the near future. So I'm watching everyone very closely, which is exciting for me, and a lot of these guys are stand-up fighters, obviously, George Masvidal is known for his striking, his Muay Thai. He's very well-rounded, and people don't understand. They haven't gone back and watched some of his fights. His fights against Paul Daly at Bellator, he out-wrestled him. If you watch his fight with Damian Maia, his grappling is very good. So, man, I'm ready for fireworks come November 4th.
And in terms of Condit coming back, are you a little bit disappointed that he didn't come back a little bit earlier and you didn't get an opportunity to fight him rather than fighting Masvidal?
I'm really not disappointed. I kind of understand why. He's been in some battles, some wars in the 170 division, fighting George St. Pierre. His fight with Robbie Lawler was just epic, which was his last fight. It took some time off to heal up and to kind of regain that fire, that flame, which some fighters kind of lose as they get very close to that title shot and don't make it. It's kind of understandable. He's a very talented fighter, so it does make sense that he took some time off to recoup, to replenish that fire that's in him, that to get out there and fight in the octagon, and just to heal up. He's been fighting for a very long time, so it's very exciting to see him come back and fight Neil Magny, and hopefully, one of these days we'll be facing off in the octagon. So I'm definitely looking forward to that as well.
Yeah, I feel like that's a matchup that'd definitely be a treat. UFC 217, obviously a massive, massive stacked card. GSP headline against Michael Bisping, your good friend GSP, and you and Jorge Masvidal. It's an interesting fight because it's a fight between, two top contenders. And, GSP obviously said that if he loses against Bisping later on in the night after you fight, he'll retire. But it's uncertain what's next if he does win. How would you sort of react if he got the shot, against Tyron Woodley next and sort of delayed your possible third shot at the title? Because, obviously a win over Jorge, might get you close there.
Yeah, man, obviously a win over George Masvidal will keep you in that top, contender for that title shot, up there with Robbie Lawler. But, I'm focused on him. I'm all my mind is set on fighting this fight November 4th. That said, Tyron Woodley is out for a little while. Not really sure how long he's going to be out for. He's got a shoulder injury. If George St. Pierre does win this fight, he may come down to face Tyron Woodley. I think he's coming back for those money fights, which is understandable. He's one of the best guys who ever stepped out in the division. He's actually my inspiration to come to mixed martial arts. He's a good friend of mine. So I wish him the best of luck, and I hope he goes out there and does work the same night. And it's great to actually be on the same card as him. One of the best who ever stepped out there. I've always wanted to fight on the same card as George St. Pierre, and this is my opportunity to do so. So I got to go out there and do work against George Masvidal. But not really sure where he's going to go. Is he going to continue to stay at the 185 division? Is he going to come down to 170? I know there was talk about him fighting Conor McGregor. So I don't know where it's going to go, where his mind is. I haven't talked to him recently to find that out. But, it's going to be fun, man. I just tell you, man. And this next year is going to have some really good fights coming up, and hopefully I'll be a part of that.
And obviously he's always been a friend of Renzo Gracie and John Danaher, the team down in New York. I'm just wondering, down towards the end of your training camp, is there any chance that you guys will be training together leading into UFC 217 at all?
I hope so. I know he's doing George St. Pierre is doing a lot of karate training. He has his own gym in Montreal, Canada. He does still work with Faraz Zahabi, but I understand that George has his own gym, so he's bringing in a lot of karate guys. He's always been a good fan of the karate style, being a karate stylist himself, Kyokushin. So that would be really fun, man. I would love to go to Montreal to work with George St. Pierre together to get ready for this fight November 4th. Not only that, but Faraz Zahabi's little brother, Ayman Zahabi, who's one of my good friends and very respectful, very honorable guy, who's going to be fighting on the same card on the undercard. So it's going to be fun to be able to fight out there with family, and I consider those guys family because I've known them for so long and learned so much from those guys. So it would be fun, man. I would love to go out and train with George St. Pierre.
Well, it'd be great if that happened leading into the event. And looking at this fight between you and Jorge and sort of talking about the stakes, you're sort of in this tough position because you've already had 2 shots at the belt. If you do beat Masvidal, what are your expectations from the UFC? And has anybody sort of told you or given you the impression that, you might not or you won't get the title shot even if you beat Masvidal convincingly at 217?
I haven't really talked to anybody about that with the UFC. The only thing that I know that I'm facing off against George Masvidal, but what I believe I have to do come November 4th to be able to stay for that title contention, to be able to fight for the title, is put on a good show, and put out a good W, an exciting W come November 4th against George Masvidal. We've been kind of going back and forth with me and Robbie Lawler. I was ranked number 1, then he's number 1, then we're both number 1. So hopefully a good win over this. I don't understand that Tyron's out for a little while. So hopefully we'll be able to fight against Robbie Lawler, maybe for an interim welterweight title against him for that belt. There's also word that RDL will want him to fight for the title too. I really don't know. I got to go out there and face George first and see what happens there before I can think about really what's going on next. But it is in the back of my mind.
Well, talk to us about Masvidal, because even though he's known for being a bit of a trash talker, it seems like he has a lot of respect for you and your fight style. How have you found being around him thus far? And are you ready for him to possibly fire up during fight week and bring his trash talking out when it comes to media days and stare downs? Yeah, man, definitely. That's his game, and that's why they call him Game Bread, man. He's always game whenever he steps out there now. So no matter who he faces, he's a tough opponent, man. He's got great strike, as you saw against Cowboy Cerrone. Finish him. I thought it should have been finished in the first round, but I ended up finishing him in the second round, early in the second. Man, his striking's very good. I have a lot of respect for him, but he's out there to take my spot. He's out there to beat me, and I can't let that happen. I do expect him to go out there and talk a little trash, but we both have respect for one another. We did some talking with each other to try and get this fight happening while I was on the injured list. I was out there in Singapore and in Brazil, and a lot of the fights in Buffalo, New York, and we ended up meeting up and talked about getting this fight happening. And it all started on social media, after his loss against Damian Maia. He was looking for a fight. I know he was trying to get a fight with Neil Magny. That didn't happen. So he said, hey, Wonderboy, let's make this thing happen. Of course, I was on the injured list, but I was like, I would love to fight you. You're ranked number 4. You're in the top 5. Let's do this. So thanks to him, we got this fight going. So, man, it's pretty cool, seeing the fans for UFC 217 talking about our fight more than the other fights on the main card. So a lot of fans are more excited about our fight than anything else. So we both have a responsibility to go out there and just really put on a show, man. And unlike Tyron, this guy comes forward. He comes to fight, and, it's got fireworks written all over it. I don't know about you, but that's what I'm thinking.
Oh, yeah. I mean, this fight's a treat. Obviously, 2 technical strikers. Just sort of weighing on Masvidal's striking. Obviously, it's probably his more dominant part of his game, even though he's a well-rounded guy. But when you look at his striking style, how do you assess it? And do you sort of see any holes that you could exploit?
Well, don't want to put anything out there. He's
Sure.
probably got guys listening to the podcast.
Of course.
But, he's got great Muay Thai stylists, and his clinch work is one of the best. I mean, he's one of the guys that goes out there and he just brings it, man. And he defeats a lot of his guys because he's a very tough opponent, and it just outworks him. His cardio, he's got cardio for days. He's been a 155er, so he's not a very big 170, but he's got cardio for days, and he breaks a lot of his guys because of that. His clinch work is one of the top guys. Is top in the welterweight division, probably in the UFC. And I haven't seen anybody better in his clinch than Anderson Silva is known for that. So he's got great knees and great elbows. I think he's going to press forward like he normally does, and tries to get me in that clinch. Maybe try and take me down here and there, because usually everybody tries to do that against me. But he's very well rounded, so I got to be on point every step of the way when I step out there against him November 4th. And I've been working religiously on my wrestling and my jiu-jitsu. So just in case the fight goes there, I'm ready for wherever it goes.
And from the sounds of your recent interviews and from what you're saying here, is you're really looking to make a big statement in this fight. You've even said that you expect this fight to be a bit of a brawl. And Jorge has claimed that he doesn't believe you when you say that, because you're more of a calculated technical striker than a brawler. So is it true that you're sort of expecting more of a brawl, and will we be seeing a different side of Stephen Wonderboy Thompson in this fight?
You know, I always go out there, you know, being aware of what my opponent's going to do. So I'm not going to put myself in a dangerous situation where I could possibly get knocked out. You know, nobody likes getting hit. I don't like getting hit. So, you know, but you're going to see more of Stephen Wonderboy Thompson. You saw my last 2 fights against Tyron. I love it when guys come forward, which is something you didn't see during the Tyron Woodley fight. But that's just the way Masvidal is. He comes walking forward. He's not afraid to press the action, which enables me to be able to use my arsenal a little bit better, to use my kicks, to use my angles. So, yeah, man, you're going to see a more exciting fight from me November 4th. And I know George Masvidal is itching at the bit to get out there and do the same. So, you know, it's going to be fun, man. And that's why I do what I do, to go out there and fight the best guys in the world. And he's definitely one of them.
And of course, this will be your second time fighting in Madison Square Garden. Something that a lot of fighters never really experience, and here you will be going in there another time. But what are you feeling about fighting there again? And is this different? Is this sort of a relief that you're not in the co-main spot? Obviously, fans really excited for this one, but you don't have, you know, the same kind of promotion. There's not as much spotlight. Is it a bit of a relief, or is it kind of, I guess, similar? Because there you had Weidman fighting, and here you have your friend in George St. Pierre.
It is kind of a relief to me. You know, going into that fight, Madison Square Garden was the very first one there. There was a lot of media obligations that we had to go through, you know, for that. This time, I'm not the main event. We are the first fight on the pay-per-view card, but you don't have all the media obligations anymore. So we can just literally focus on the fight. And it's definitely an honor and a privilege to be able to face George Masvidal in Madison Square Garden in New York City, because it's a home away from home. I spend a lot of time there anyway, but just to be back there and put on another show in front of the fans. You know, my last fight there was I fought a draw. We got fight of the night for that fight. So going back there and getting a W in my home away from home would just be unbelievable. So I'm training literally as hard as I can for this fight, to be able to put on a great performance for everybody in New York City. And, man, it is different from the last one, because I can just go out there and focus on the fight and not have to worry about the media stuff that comes along with it.
Well, Stephen, as we wrap up, because we don't want you to miss out on your wedding mains. That's usually the best part of a wedding reception, the mains. Yeah. And I hope that somebody didn't switch out your meat one with a vegetarian one, because that also always happens at weddings. When you turn around, someone switches out your meals. But so we want to avoid that. So to do that, we're going to wrap up. But while we do that, we want to get your prediction for this fight: UFC 217, Madison Square Garden, you versus Masvidal, and a very fan-friendly matchup that everybody's looking forward to. How do you see yourself winning?
You know, every time I visualize a fight, I never visualize a knockout. I always visualize my hand raised at the very end. You know, going out there and putting on a show for everybody who's going to be tuned in to watch or there live, just to expect a very good, exciting fight from me and George Masvidal with my hand raised at the very end. So hopefully everybody tunes in and watches the fight November 4th.
Oh, there's no doubt about that. Everybody's going to be tuning in America and Australia, all over the world. Of course, if you don't know, the fight takes place on November 4th. It's going to be November 5th here in Australia. Stephen Wonderboy Thompson against Jorge Masvidal, UFC 217 at Madison Square Garden in New York City. Stephen, we'll let you go. We'll let you get back to the wedding. We're imagining something along the lines of Wedding Crashers. I don't know whether you'd be more Vince Vaughn or Owen Wilson, but I feel like we'll find out. We'll see the pictures on Instagram. Of course, that's going to be at Wonderboy MMA, and you can check him out on Twitter as well. So thank you so much for chatting with us. Always appreciate it.
Thank you, my friend, and I just want to thank you for having me on and showing all the love for all my Australian friends. So thank you very much for having me on, brother.
Hey, this is Ariel Helwani, and you're listening to Submission Radio with my two favorite mates, Dennis and Casper.
All right, guys. Our next guest spent his fighting career as one of Ireland's most exciting and beloved fighters, a former cage contender featherweight champion. He now coaches at the world-famous SBG Ireland, as well as his own gym, SBG Charleston, Dublin. He's also been training Conor McGregor for well over 10 years and has helped him throughout his biggest fights, among others. Rowdy Owen Roddy, it's been a while. Welcome back to Submission Radio. What's the crack, mate?
Pleasure, guys. Good to be back on. I like the intro. The intro is pretty cool. So nice one.
Yeah, usually we start with the intro, and that's the highlight of the interview, and then it just goes down slowly as it progresses. But we saw on social media, Owen, that there was a bit of a boozy weekend, some celebrations there going on. Tell us, what form are you in right now, and what was it?
I'm hanging together now today, but I'm all right. I'll get through it. It was my wife's 30th, so I've been drinking all weekend pretty much, but it's all right to let loose every now and then.
Well, you wouldn't be Irish if you weren't drinking all weekend, right? I hope we can say that. What do you
Australians? We can say that because we drink all week long, Owen. So we're on the same page. Just a quick highlight from the weekend. What stood out to you from the 30th celebration? We know it's been obviously a huge year for you professionally. You've had some of the biggest highlights of your career, but we know your wife has been there for you through it as well. So what's a highlight for her from this weekend that you can share with us?
The highlight, I don't know. I suppose we were. We were hanging out of a couple of bottles of vodka last night at about 5 a.m, so that might have been a highlight. But I know she got everything she wanted, so I'm sure she was happy with everything. And we're heading over to New York and all for our birthday as well, so that'll be good as well.
Ah, nice. How long are you going to New York for?
Well, I'm going to go over to New York early next year for a couple of days, 5 or 6 days, just. Let her go shopping, I suppose, and see the sights. You know, she never came over to New York for the last fight, so I said I'd bring her over and let her see New York. You know.
Well, Owen, it has been a huge year for you, obviously a massive year, and I mean, since the storm that was McGregor Mayweather, tell us, how have the last few months been since? I mean, have things calmed down a bit for you, or is it still just as busy as it was before?
Yeah, no, I mean, it's been the whole world tour, the whole build up to the Mayweather fight was crazy, and it's quieting down a bit. But I'm just enjoying, the attention that I got from the fight, and I'm getting a lot of opportunities, and I'm looking to move gym and stuff. So I'm flat out as always, but that whole experience was unbelievable.
Well, that was actually going to be our next question. I mean, that was obviously a big moment for you, given that for once, you were the head coach and you were the lead cornerman and you did a ton of interviews and there was some really fantastic pieces written about you. It was almost like a delayed celebration of your career in a sense, and it was really good to sort of see you get that extra attention. Did that sort of fight and that time period change your life significantly? You mentioned, you're opening up a new gym. Are you still feeling the effects in the aftermath since then?
Yeah. As I said, the main... all eyes were on me for this camp in regards to the coaching side of things, because obviously I've been doing the striking with Conor for many years now, and with it being just a boxing match, all the attention was on me, and it was an amazing experience, and like all the stuff that came from it, like there was a lot of articles put out about me and stuff, and people got a bit more info, because I kind of keep to myself. I'm quiet enough for most part. But people got an insight into who I am and where I've come from as well. So it was great. It was great to get that exposure, and it always helps when you're getting that type of exposure. It helps with the gym, and So I'm looking to move new gym in the coming months and take it from there.
Yeah, it was a huge moment, and I mean, it's something that a lot of coaches don't really get an opportunity to do. To have your fighter in possibly one of the biggest fights of all time. I mean, it was definitely in the modern world. Just the talk of the town. I was walking to the groceries here in Melbourne, and there was an old lady talking about Conor McGregor. She had no idea who he was, but she thought he was going to knock, she was going to knock out Floyd Mayweather. He was going to knock out Floyd Mayweather in the first round, and she didn't know who Floyd Mayweather was, but the money was gone. And Conor, so tell us, after this whole crazy whirlwind, and I suppose everybody, wherever you go, coming up to you, giving tips on how Conor McGregor could beat Floyd Mayweather and what you should be doing. What's the biggest thing that you learned from this experience, I suppose, as a coach? And if you ever do get a fight of this massive caliber again, which is pretty likely because Conor McGregor's your man, what would you apply? What would you learn that you would apply to that?
I don't really know, to be honest. I mean, I think we did great, to be honest. The whole, with the time we had, I think we couldn't have done much better. what would I change? I would probably try and come up with a couple more strategies and when with the Mayweather fight, it was like I knew he would come out and he would fight a certain way, and then when he realised that wouldn't work, I knew he'd have 2 or 3 styles, as I would say, that he would come out with. But the last kind of the way he fought, from the 4th round on, hands high, elbows in, and kind of walked kind of down. I wasn't prepared for that. So I think if I could take out from that, I probably should have been a bit more prepared for that type of fight. But the whole experience was unbelievable. The camp for the time we had went perfect. I felt okay in the corner. I've cornered many fights, obviously not to that magnitude, but when you've done so many corners, it doesn't really change. And I felt I'd done good in the corner, and so just mainly, I should have probably had an answer for that type of fight, but you can't get it right all the time,
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, it was, like you said, it was a massive fight. Oscar De La Hoya, he had a lot of criticism going into this fight, and then obviously we saw what happened with Triple G and Canelo there in that fight. Now that it's all said and done, a lot of people are saying almost that fight was more of a black eye for the sport of boxing than this fight ever was. Now that it's all said and done in the aftermath, what do you think about how everything worked out in that regard?
Yeah, obviously, Oscar, he was just trying to save his own fight. I enjoyed the Canelo and Triple G fight. I thought it was a great fight. Obviously the draw, I didn't think it was a draw like almost everybody, but I think Oscar was just a bit intimidated because he booked the guys that we originally were looking to get, and then he was expecting us to go after their fight, and then when Conor and Floyd signed the fight before it, I just think he was a bit nervous, a bit worried about it. But so that was it really. I didn't really take too much from it.
Yeah, of course, and I think largely after McGregor Mayweather, everybody sort of enjoyed themselves, and it was a largely positive experience overall. And here we are, barely 2 months later, and people, we just had UFC 216, and Conor's shadow sort of loomed very heavily over the event. Just wondering, what did you think of the fight? Obviously, Kevin Lee, Tony Ferguson fighting for the interim belt. Did you watch the fight, and what did you think of it, Owen?
I didn't watch the fight. Yeah, I was, as I said, I was out. I'm going to watch it tomorrow now. I know obviously Ferguson got the win, and it's looking like Dana White wants Conor to defend the belt against Ferguson. It'll be a good fight as well. It'll be an interesting fight. But I don't know what's next. But either or, if Conor fights Ferguson or if he fights Diaz or whoever, yourself, it's just going to be an unbelievable experience, and I'm looking forward to it.
Certainly. And in the fight, when you watch it, you'll see that Ferguson displayed a good jab. There were some good jabs there, a bit back and forth. Kevin Lee did go into this with a staph infection that blew everybody's mind, but he was cleared to fight. You could see it on his chest. It was there, but he did get gassed going into this fight. But I guess the big question is, in everybody's minds, is how do you think the striking compares between Conor McGregor and Tony Ferguson? And do you see any problems that Ferguson can pose to Conor McGregor in a potential fight? He's good. Obviously, he wouldn't be the interim champion if he wasn't good. His style is, it's not traditional. It's a bit unorthodox and stuff. But I just honestly think that Conor's going to be way too clean for Ferguson. If Ferguson tries to stand with Conor for an extended period of time, it'll be lights out in my opinion. He's tough as well. He's tough and durable. So he may take a couple of smacks, but at the end of the day, Conor's going to be way too clean and too technical to. He won't get touched. That's my opinion. But yeah, it'll be an exciting fight as well because
Ferguson does come to fight, and he's aggressive. He goes in, he looks to finish fights. So it'll be exciting. But without a doubt, if he wants to stand and bang with Conor, it'll be lights out fairly quick, I think.
I think regardless, it'll definitely be an exciting fight. And obviously, you being the striking coach that you are, Owen, obviously I want to pick your brain just a little bit. And something that John Kavanagh has always spoken about, how the biggest challenge for Conor McGregor would be not so much the short, stocky wrestlers, it's the tall, sort of lanky, durable guys. Nate Diaz obviously being the main one, but sort of Tony Ferguson also fitting into that category. How do you think the height and the reach would do you think that would be a factor at all? And do you think that would lead to a sort of similar fight like Diaz? Obviously, you're saying lights out. Do you think it would be sort of a war for a period of time, or do you think even though he's a bit of a tall, lanky guy, it's a different matchup in your opinion?
I think, I think because we came through those two Diaz fights, we'd be a bit more capable of dealing with the tall, rangy guy. I think the one unique thing that Diaz has is he's just that unbelievable chin. Like I don't think Ferguson would be able to take the shots that Diaz took. Do you know what I mean? I think he'll be asleep, or the ref will have stepped in and stopped the fight if Conor lands. Where Diaz, like Conor was landing, all the shots on Diaz as well, and all the stuff that we came up with worked against Diaz. It's just he just kept coming and coming and coming and coming. I don't think Ferguson is as durable as Diaz. So I think we'll be well able to land our shots. There's plenty of holes in Ferguson's game, and I think we can capitalise and land the shots that we need to land.
Mm-hmm. And I suppose you mentioned that Dana White did say that, it looks like this fight is next, but it looks like you guys were pretty excited for a possible third fight with Nate Diaz. And from all the interviews we heard Conor McGregor speak, and, he seemed pretty pumped for a third Nate Diaz fight. And even though technically it doesn't make as much sense because Ferguson is the interim champion and they should probably fight each other, a lot of casual fans would probably be dying to see that third Nate Diaz fight as well. So from the perspective of excitement, what do you think appeals more to the team and Conor McGregor? A Nate Diaz trilogy that would sort of excite the casual fans, or a Tony Ferguson fight that may be less profitable, but I suppose is a lot better for the UFC in terms of their structure and people complaining that, it's all about money fights and contenders and people aren't not getting the proper shots they deserve? Well,
I mean, I honestly think that people would rather see Conor v Diaz. I just think it's a more exciting fight for everybody. You know what I mean? It's the trilogy, the first two fights, the back and forth between the guys, the way the fights went. Who wouldn't want to see the third fight? But yeah, of course, it makes sense that he fights, he defends the belt. Whatever happens, I don't know, but I said this already. I would like to see Diaz 3, but the Ferguson fight is an interesting one as well. Like he's an exciting fighter, so it will be an exciting fight. So either or. I'll just be happy to get Conor back in the UFC, fighting in the cage, and doing what we do best. You know what I mean? That's I just can't wait for us to go again. So I just want to see him back in there sooner rather than later,
Yeah, certainly. And I guess that was the big question, because going to the Mayweather fight, a lot of people believe that maybe, Conor McGregor will stay in boxing after fighting Mayweather. And obviously some of that thought changed after the fight. But I'm just wondering, where are we at in terms of McGregor fighting in boxing again? Is there a chance he fights in boxing rather than going back to the UFC, or do you think it's certain that there's a return to the cage before any of that is even thought about?
Yeah, well, there was talk about potentially boxing again, and there was talk of Malinage, and there was a lot of talk of boxing and stuff like that. But I think Conor said himself that he's got unfinished business in the octagon, and he wants to go back and defend his belt, you know. So yeah, I think that's what's going to happen. Is he done with boxing? Probably not. You know what I mean? If the right fight comes up and the right money's on the table, I mean, I'm sure he would jump in and go again, you know, without a doubt. So who knows what next year is going to be like? Anyway, it's going to be bigger than 2017. Anyways, that's what I imagine.
It's good when you have those kind of options. I mean, it's a good problem to have when you have, you know, an abundance of options. Just sort of looking at it from a broad perspective, obviously, you know, people are celebrating this interim belt, but in your opinion, considering that it's been just slightly less than a year since Conor first won the lightweight belt, how much do you think this interim belt means? You know, that's just been won by Tony Ferguson.
I mean, I'm sure it means a lot to Ferguson. To Conor has his belts at home, like, and he's never lost them. So, in his eyes, it's not real, like, you know what I mean. But you know, at the end of the day, the UFC have to, you know, if Conor can't defend the belt in a certain amount of time, they have to put out a belt obviously to keep people excited and give the people that are coming through, the number one contenders and stuff like that. Give them their opportunity. Like, you know, Conor had to fight for an interim belt himself. So, you know, that has to be done. But in Conor's eyes, he's got his belts at home and nobody's came in and beat him to get those belts. So in his eyes, he's still the featherweight champion and he's still the lightweight champion. You know, and I think, you know, I think it, you know, the Ferguson fight will be exciting, you know, whether it comes, you know, early next year or whenever. But I think it'll be an exciting fight.
And we want to sort of clarify when you think that return will be. But it was funny because John Kavanagh told us, and this was a while back when we were doing the Australian tour of our interview, but he said that Conor McGregor keeps his belt on the floor like in an empty room, and he just kind of throws them on the floor, and that's about it. So I'm wondering if there's a cabinet now that you know the belt tally is growing. But one of the talking points, Owen, after the Mayweather fight, and Conor McGregor sort of alluded to this and admitted this, was his issue with cardio, because it kind of looks like his Achilles heel, you know, but it's tough to tell because this is a guy going over to the sport of boxing. He's going over to a different round system. But we have seen it previously in his fights where he does have that lull before he comes back and has that second or third wind.
Yeah.
How you guys, I suppose, sort of dealing with that hole in his game, I suppose. And how do you fix something like that? Because I suppose that's a pretty... It looks like Conor works out really, really hard. He does a lot of rounds. He works out really, really hard, and he's still having these issues. How do you guys go about trying to fix it?
Well, I mean, I don't have any control over the cardio side of things. He's got Dr. Julian Dolby that looks after that. He runs the fast program, but you know, I mean, we didn't really have a huge amount of time for the last fight for the Floyd fight. Like, it was a 10-week camp, I think, in total. So I mean, and you know, the start of Conor is now he's not in training out of camp as much as he used to be. You know, where Conor would fight on a Saturday night and be back in the gym Monday morning. Now he's got so many other businesses and so many other things going on that he's flying, you know, halfway across the world, and he's gone for a month doing this and doing that. So he's not getting as much training as he used to. So that may play a bit of a factor. But you know, and then the way he fights as well, he's a sprinter. You know what I mean? So he when he's throwing combinations that fast, that powerful, and you know, that takes it out of you. And if you don't get the time to recover in that, you know, in a round or whatever, it's hard. You know, it takes its toll. I think with the Diaz, the second Diaz fight, the way the Diaz guys fight, and the way Floyd fought in the boxing match, was they set a pace like, you know, at 60% of their output, and they continue that pace consistently right through the fight. Conor doesn't fight like that. Conor, you know, is an explosive fighter. He fights in bursts. But if you're not getting time to recover, like with the Diaz fight, he's constantly in your face. So you drop him, you land your shots, and then you back off to get your breath back, and the guy's back in your face again. It's hard. But I mean, Conor's. I know what people keep saying is cardio was an issue. I don't believe it's that much of an issue. I think it can be fixed, and if we can keep him back in the, if we can get it back training and get a good long camp, you'll see that there is no issue there.
Yeah, for sure. And I think you hit the nail on the head. It's a perfect sort of segue into the next question where, a good long camp, there are rumors flying around of Conor McGregor potentially fighting in December. The UFC may be wanting to, him versus Diaz or him versus Ferguson for the end of year card. John Kavanagh's gone out and said, in an ideal world, March, St. Paddy's Day, New York, Madison Square Garden, that would be, perfect. So when do you think it's likely that Conor McGregor returns? And if the UFC did say, look, December, and Conor McGregor agreed, from a coach's standpoint, do you think you would be able to get him ready, for December, or would you like sort of more time to sort of have that perfect long camp?
Yeah, I would like more time, most definitely. Yeah, but at the end of the day, if Conor sits down and he goes, all right, look, I have the fight. This is the fight. It is December. We go straight into camp again. But ideally, you want a good one. You want to be back training, enjoying your training, improving. When you just go from camp to camp, there's very little learning in camp. Camp, you're just fine tuning what you already have. It's when you're fighting, when you're training out of camp is when you improve, when you work on new techniques and you develop new areas of the game. So for us, I'd like to see him back training, like in the next week or two or whatever, and then train through the Christmas or whatever, enjoy his training, and then go into camp after the Christmas, and fight in whatever the first quarter of next year.
Mm-hmm. And Coach, we really appreciate your time. I'll let you go in just a minute. I guess the big question in everybody's mind is, what kind of Conor McGregor are we going to see back in the octagon now that he's got that, I suppose, extra confidence in his striking after all that boxing training? I mean, we saw him actually land some great shots on Floyd Mayweather. A lot of people really giving him a lot of kudos. A lot of people from the boxing world really impressed what he was able to do in those earlier rounds. How do you think this is going to impact on the Conor McGregor that we're going to see back in the octagon? Yeah,
well, I always said, like, Conor has this amazing ability to pick up techniques very, very quickly, and because we focused on boxing for 10 weeks non-stop, and we were working different shots and different angles, everything just got so much sharper. His hand speed, his shot selection was on point. He was landing shots that I'd never seen him land before, just because we've been working them consistently, and I think when you see him back in the cage, I think you will see the difference in his hands. But his hands were always good. He's always been able to land those strikes. I just think he's going to look a lot sharper, and then we're going to be adding in the rest of the tools, the kicks and knees and the elbows as well. So his striking, his hands have got way better in that camp. In that 10 weeks, he gained, a year's experience, or, in just working on the hands. So big knockouts when he gets back into the UFC again.
Well, there you go. And obviously in the sort of near future, just as we let you go, Owen, Adam Lobov's obviously taking on Andre Fili in Poland on October 1st, just a couple of weeks. How's he looking in training? Have you sort of, been a big part of that training camp? And are you going to be going to Poland for this one?
I'll be over there. Adam looks fantastic. He's in phenomenal shape. He's roiled up for this fight. He's excited about it. Fili comes to stand and bang as well. So, it's going to be an exciting fight. Adam is doing his thing. Landing his shots, and it's going to be great. I'm going to be over there. I'm looking forward to it, and I think the fans in Poland are going to get an exciting fight without a doubt.
And possibly the most important question of the whole interview, Owen, will the Owen Roddy vlogs obviously we all saw the vlogs for the Mayweather build-up. We've seen them. These things are fantastic. They were the biggest secrets kept in the game.
Mad.
Now everybody loves it. Everybody's popping for them. Everybody wants to see them. Will there be vlogs going into Poland? Let's set the statement here on Submission Radio.
Of course there will. Yeah, there's always vlogs. As I said, I just do that for fun. I just do it for the fun. But people are all tuning in and they love it. So yeah, of course there'll be vlogs. Give people a little insight into the lead up into the fight and the usual, the walkout and stuff like that. So yeah, so stay tuned. Check me out on YouTube at the SBG Charlestown page, and thanks for all the support as always.
Absolutely, yeah. It's a very underrated channel. You guys also sort of break down the finishes from most UFC cards, something we saw recently, and it's flying under the radar. So definitely subscribe to SBG Charlestown. Of course, follow Owen Roddy on Twitter and Instagram at Coach Owen Roddy and at SBG Charlestown. Really appreciate you chatting to us today, Owen, or tonight in Ireland. Of course, you had a big weekend, celebrated the wife's 30th, and sort of hanging in there a little bit boozy. So we really appreciate it. Extra character there.
No hassle at all, man. No hassle at all, guys. Come here, I appreciate it, man. All the best. Leave us to it. Bye now.
Hey, this is Jimmy Manuel. You listen to Submission Radio.
All right, guys. Joining us here on the program is a man that you know well. He does amazing work with Severe MMA and Sherdog.com. You know him from his amazing Twitter as well. I'm, of course, talking about Sean Seheehan coming back to the program to talk about a fun weekend in the sports of MMA. My friend Sean, it's late at night. How are you? Thanks for joining us.
What's up, lads? Thanks very, very much for having me. It's great. Delighted to be here. Actually, first things first, let me do this. Well, Graham Warmy, get in the plug. 9th of November, Australia, the Notorious documentary produced by Severe MMA is out. So there you go. There's the plug in straight away.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Nothing to be said after that.
Literally speechless. What exactly were your sort of involvement in that? Because obviously this is massive. This is blowing up. No, personally, I can't wait to watch it. But I saw you were saying, and you and Graham and the Severe MMA guys literally dedicated years of your lives to sort of putting this together. So how did that come about?
Well, I wasn't. I was really involved. The lads were involved. I was kind of running. No, I did not. I basically ran the website for the last maybe year and a half or so, along with Graham. But Graham's kind of the producer. He did the sound on it, and a couple of other guys as well along with him. Obviously, Graham runs Severe MMA, and they've been videoing with Conor McGregor since before he was a Cage Warrior champion, even, or around then anyway. And they have been, the documentary obviously was on RT, the main broadcaster in Ireland. I think it was a 6-piece documentary, and there was a 1-piece documentary as well before that, I believe. So produced with Universal and everything. So it's a big thing for Severe MMA, and it's good. Proud to be. I'm not a part of it, but I'm gonna just take credit for it anyway and just say it's Severe MMA, and I'm that part of it as well. So brilliant.
Before we go to the fight too, I mean, this is the more important stuff really here. 2 questions. Will Universal Studios have a Severe MMA ride now that this movie's coming out? And also, when's the Sean Seheehan black and white unplugged behind the scenes documentary coming out, which includes the drug use, drinking, and also sleeping with different women of various sizes?
Yeah, Severe MMA ride it'd be long but very, very inexpensive, and take up loads of your time, and the Sean Seheehan story. They should get me doing, I think, for the DVD, just sitting there watching the film, just talking about it and giving out the Graham for all the bad things he's done. Put in. I think that'd be. Just picking out all the problems with it.
Yeah, and you need some random British guy, some sleazy a music producer, be like, Sean walked in, right, and he's like, Severe MMA, McGregor documentary, and I was like, that's a #1 hit right there, and that's the history of Severe MMA right there.
Another documentary. There's another documentary in that. There, the history of Severe MMA, 100%.
They tried to put in a Submission Radio ride at a local amusement park here, but apparently not enough people lined up to ride it, so they had to close it down. It was like a mix between a horror show and a roller coaster that goes off the edge into the water. So it was good. Apparently, it got a 1 out of 5 rating on Google reviews. Anyway, let's talk about UFC 216, because a lot of stuff has been going on, and we want to really kick this thing off, Sean, by talking about the main event between Tony Ferguson and and Kevin Lee. There's a lot to unpack here, but as we kick this thing off, I just want to get your thoughts and your guys' thoughts on the actual fight itself. Sean, what did you think of the performances by both men?
I didn't think it was their best performances from either man, to be honest. Coming into the fight, I was expecting what we got from Kevin Lee, to be honest. It likes to play a wide game, comes in, gets his takedowns, very, very good ground and pound. Whereas Tony Ferguson is a guy, he loves to attack, although this fight and the fight before, obviously 5-round, big name, big fights. He hasn't done that as much. He's been more kind of clinical in the way he's done things. So I don't think Ferguson did as well as he usually does. He, especially in that Rafael dos Anjos fight, he didn't get hit that much in that fight early on, and he got hit a lot more in this fight. Kevin Lee, in fairness, now did fairly well standing up, but I thought he did get tired. He used his wrestling well. Maybe might have used it a little bit too much at times, especially coming to the end. Got a bit restless. We'll obviously get to the finish and stuff like that, but very mistake-ridden fight, and I think maybe if that fight had happened and the co-main event wasn't there, we'd say, I think it was still a very good fight, and both of them were very, very good fighters. But I think we saw utter perfection before it in the fight, and anything that came after it wasn't going to be as good. So that's kind of where I saw a good fight, but not the best fight, nothing to blow you away.
And I think Lee sort of dropping and hurting Tony, it's not really a good look, and I think it's one of the reasons, and don't get me wrong, really, really fun, really, really entertaining fight, but I think, Tony going down early on in the fight, it's not a good look when people are talking about him potentially fighting Conor McGregor. And obviously Conor McGregor has phenomenal angles and he has that knockout power. So I think, it doesn't hurt the marketing for Tony versus McGregor, but I think it's one of the reasons why a lot of people are already saying, oh, it's a pretty good matchup for Conor McGregor in this situation. I think when I was watching Lee, we knew about the terrible weight cut that he had. We found out moments earlier about the staph, or what we only could assume that was staph when he walked into the octagon. And then when I saw him sort of jumping around and getting really, really hyped up, I thought, this is not really something that you see of many pro fighters, getting that adrenaline dump and letting it sort of overcome you. And it's sort of before the fight even started, you got the sense that, man, Lee is probably not going to be lasting very long in this fight. But yeah, overall, I think it was a fun fight. And I think one thing to sort of mention, this was Tony Ferguson's longest layoff of his entire career. I believe it was 11 months. And so I kind of suspected that even if he comes in later on into his own, that the start might be a little bit shaky for him. And I don't know. I don't know what you think, Sean. I don't know what you think, Dennis. Maybe that, that sort of rust at the start was due to that and the fact that, Tony Ferguson is used to fighting every 4 or 5 months throughout his whole career.
And Lee did kind of like Vitor Belfort in the first round, really put everything he had in there. And I agree with you, Casper. I mean, jumping around, he was going crazy. In my mind, I was going, I don't know, is this a bit of an experience of being in that main event level and getting that adrenaline dump early? But to me, Tony Ferguson looked really, really flat-footed. And I know his movement is usually pretty good, but he surprised me by being in the pocket for a lot longer than he should have been in a lot of exchanges. And his head movement actually wasn't that great. It wasn't as great as I was used to seeing him sort of have it. Also, he just wasn't as elusive as he usually was. I don't know if something got to him or the fact that there was so much riding on this fight, but I think the interesting thing was that the finish came via the triangle. And Sean, I'm just curious to hear your thoughts as to what exactly was going on in Lee's mind as that was happening, because obviously, it was a pretty basic triangle setup, and I think when I was watching that, I think Lee believed that, hey, this is just going to be another attempt that I'm going to get out of. So he didn't really do the stuff technically that he needed to really get out of it. He kind of got stuck in a really dodgy position and realized, damn, why did I just sort of leave myself here? Is that what you think sort of happened to him in that spot, or do you think he was maybe too tired to even recognize what Tony was doing? What are your thoughts on the way this finish happened?
I think it was a couple of different things, really. I definitely think tiredness was probably the biggest factor in it. I also think the fact that he had taken Tony down before, and as you said, Tony went for a submission before and didn't get it. He went for that armbar, didn't get it. He managed to get out of it. I think maybe he got a little bit of confidence in that. And you heard Daniel Cormier saying it on the commentary. You can't rest here, Kevin. You can't rest. He saw him resting, and I think he did rest there for a second, and that's because of the tiredness again, and that's why he got caught. I was watching it back kind of in slow motion and things, and just before that, when it initially kind of went to the ground, and when Ferguson was throwing up the legs to try to go for the triangle, I saw Lee catching his thumb, like trying to control his hand, something like that. That's kind of a last gasp kind of move. that's not, as you were saying, there's not the exact right way of defending. I'm no jiu-jitsu expert by any means now, but you see guys doing it, you know. That old Chael Sonnen thing when he got submitted by Anderson Silva, putting the hand straight down on the mat, leaving it straight out. Joe Rogan commented on it very well, I thought, saying you need to get your elbows outside of the body so they can't grab a hold of him. Both his arms were straight on up above Ferguson's body at one stage. Like it was just very off even before, you know, he got caught in the triangle. And I think, as I said, you know, I thought it was very good the way Ferguson actually, you know, everyone knows what a triangle is, obviously pushed up the arm, got his leg in behind it, and then kind of hooked the arm behind his leg as well, so he'd no way getting out, and then pull down the head and everything. But yeah, like usually, even with that Chael Sonnen one against Anderson Silva, you know, he kind of defended that the right way. He stood up and he fell back, you know, to try to get out of it, to put his legs over, you know, either kick him off or try to break his hands off with your legs or whatever like that. But I think he was just too tired, and there was a little bit of a realization as well, I think, that it was over, and you know, Tony Ferguson kind of had it. He had him wrapped up. He wasn't getting out of it, and you know, obviously the staph infection, the weight cut is a huge part of that. But you mentioned it as well, just the main event, and it's not just the main event. You know, he fought in the main event in his last card, but this is a pay-per-view main event for the interim title. You know, you could have a chance of fighting Conor McGregor if you win this, and that's the biggest payday you're ever going to get in your whole life, unless you beat him and there's a rematch, you know. So that the amount of pressure on Kevin Lee, he's only 24, and for him to go in to do that, I think that kind of pressure got to Tony Ferguson as well, because that was his first title fight as well, let's not forget. And you know, it showed them both guys. But yeah, Lee, there was so much going into Lee getting tired and getting triangled that, you know, it was a bit sad, I suppose, to see it in that way. But fair play to Tony Ferguson, you know, for taking his chance.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, that week sort of, it looked like almost like Kevin Lee's week. Like, not to say that it wasn't Tony Ferguson's, but it was, you know, we're used to seeing Tony Ferguson. There was a lot of hype behind Tony Ferguson, and in this time, Kevin Lee coming out as a dark horse, really wowing a lot of people. You know, his fancy outfits, his you know, impressive trash talk, and I totally agree with you that might have gotten to his head. And also with that triangle, you know, BJJ Scout, you probably saw this, Sean, and Dennis as well. BJJ Scout had a phenomenal breakdown and a preview of the fight where Kevin Lee, of course, he baits guys into letting him put him into arm bars and triangles so that he can pass. And I think maybe that was sort of a factor, something that he's used to doing. I know even when I used to do BJJ, I would let guys get me into triangles so that I could pass the side control, and I think that's another thing that sort of didn't work out for him, and he sort of had that false confidence. But one thing that I want to touch on is Ferguson's post-fight speech. You know, very much, look, it wasn't the greatest post-fight speech purely because it had shades of Nate Diaz written all over it. It was almost like, it didn't feel to me like a Tony Ferguson post-fight speech when he called out Conor McGregor and called him McNuggets. It sort of felt like Tony Ferguson's version of the Nate Diaz speech. And I think I don't think it's something that he really wanted to do, and I think it's clear by when he beat Rafael dos Anjos, he didn't say anything. He kind of had this idea that my actions do the talking for me, and that's all I need. And, you know, in an ideal world, then that should be enough. But, of course, you saw Khabib Nurmagomedov sort of a week or two later upstage him with a great promo, UFC, give me your lightweight chicken. And so this time, Tony Ferguson kind of felt like, look, I don't really want to, but I have to say something. I have to give a promo. And, you know, he only did it once Joe Rogan sort of prompted him. So I'm just wondering, Dennis, you know, obviously you, me, and Sean, lifelong pro wrestling fans, what did you think of the promo? Where did it stack up? Did you feel it was organic? And did you sort of get the sense that, you know, maybe it was a little bit forced and Tony did it because he had to, but didn't really want to?
It brought back shades of the Ronda Rousey promo from a month ago over in the WWE. No, look, it was one of those things where it was a little bit disappointing. And look, the thing, it didn't help that Joe Rogan was laughing his ass off right next to Tony Ferguson as he was saying it, and a lot of people were laughing. I watched it in a bar, and the reaction was laughter. I think obviously it didn't come out very sincere, and I love Tony Ferguson. He comes on our program a lot. He's a really, really nice guy. But sometimes when he does his trash talk, he has this tendency where he doesn't really connect it. Like he'll start somewhere and then kind of get lost along the way and then finish with something completely different that had nothing to do with what he started with.
Right, yeah.
And I don't know, this was just an example of just a little bit of, I suppose, forced, not real. I would have really liked to actually just hear him speak from the heart, not yell and maybe say something along the lines of, you know, like, I'm the real champion now, McGregor. You know, McGregor's not a real man.
Piece of shit. Conor McGregor, you piece of shit.
Yeah, it's just not real it doesn't feel real because you could tell that it was put on. And when Nate Diaz does it, you're like, whoa, man, like I would not, like Joe Rogan's not laughing at Nate Diaz when Nate Diaz is saying, things like that. I'll tell you that right now. But with Tony Ferguson, it wasn't him. It wasn't authentic. So it didn't come off great. And I think, overall, I'd have to give it, if we give out ratings with Timothy Johnson mustaches, and it's got to be in the low, like 3 out of 10 or like 1.5 out of 5. But really, really low. And you got to be really careful. That's the thing. I mean, Sean and Casper, you guys will sort of go back to this, but you got to be really careful because everybody is calling out Conor McGregor now. It's like every single person will say something about Conor McGregor. So you're now competing with Paulie Malignaggi says something every day, every hour, every second. So it's like you need to come up with something original and something different. And he just didn't really capitalize on that moment. Now, mind you, he had emotions going through him, and I've been in similar positions where I've just said the most ridiculous stuff on submission radio, so I understand it, but it was definitely an opportunity. I think it was more comedic than anything else. I don't know. What do you think,
Sean?
Sean?
He was caught off guard. I think he kind of forgot, like, oh yeah, shit, I got to do a promo, and then Joe Rogan's like, oh, you gonna do a promo, and he's like, just kind of busted something out. What did you think, Sean? Are we insane here, or are you on the same page here? One of us.
No, I agree. Like, he had 11 months, as you said there, 11 months between fights, and McNuggets was the best he could come up with. Like, it was kind of embarrassing. Me too. I said people were laughing at it. Were people laughing with him, or were they laughing at him? And that when you get that sort of heat, that's never very good. Like, the fight and the finish, he finished Kevin Lee, who's a very, very good guy, to triangle him, and like that speaks for itself. But then you do need to come out and say something. I just think it was the word McNuggets. If he'd said, Conor, you're a piece of shit, or it wouldn't have sounded half as bad. It wouldn't have been great, but I don't think anyone would be saying, oh, that was cringe, that was awful. It was just that word McNuggets. He just made it, it was just awful. If he'd said, Conor, you're a piece of shit, defender vacate, I think people would have said, oh shit, that was good, or that was he's calling out McGregor, he had to do it. Yeah, but it was just it was a fail, as the kids would say.
a fail for Sean Seheehan here. Yeah, but look, I don't want to sit here shitting on Ferguson. I felt bad for him because, like I said, I kind of felt like he was pressured into it, and he didn't really want to do it, and that's kind of, that's what it is. That's the sport these days. You have to call somebody out, and I don't think he was ready for it. But what do you guys think is next for Ferguson? Should it be Conor McGregor? This is the hot topic. This is the discussion right here. Daniel Cormier, who, clearly is 100% unbiased in this situation, was suggesting that you make Nate Diaz, Conor McGregor 3, and you give Khabib Nurmagomedov his buddy Tony Ferguson for the interim belt. I mean, you've got a million titles in the lightweight division simultaneously. What do you think, Dennis? What do you think is sort of the best option? Are you more for Nate Diaz, Conor McGregor, the trilogy being next, maybe December, maybe March, somewhere next year, or do you think it should be Tony Ferguson, Conor McGregor?
I want to see Tony Ferguson, Conor McGregor, just because I'm sick of these interim titles and what's going on. Like Robert Whittaker is interim champion. We don't know when he's going to fight for a title next. All this stuff popping up. Even on the program, Stephen Wonderboy Thompson mentioned that he wants to, have an interim championship going on in the welterweight division. So too many interim championships going on. So in that sense, I would like that fight to come together. But realistically, even though Dana White says that is the next fight, we've learned to take what Dana White says with a grain of salt. And I don't know whether the bus is still at the station with that one, or whether it's or a ship or whatever dock. He uses a lot of different types of statements. It's either a bus or a ship. Or maybe this time it's going to be a plane. The plane had a flight change plan, and now it's flying to another country. But whatever he says, it's definitely not what's going to happen. I think if Conor, to be honest, and I mean, we spoke to Owen Roddy about this on the program, the feeling I'm getting is, and especially after this performance, look, if Tony Ferguson went out there and absolutely destroyed Kevin Lee in that first round, looked invincible, I think Conor McGregor would say, hey, this is a challenge that I'm really keen for. People might actually get more excited about this fight if I play this thing right. But because both guys did sort of knock each other down, there were sort of times where it looked like Kevin Lee was going to win when he had Tony Ferguson mounted, and the way that it finished, I still think Conor McGregor is going to see Nate Diaz as the bigger challenge. There's no doubt about it. There's more money to be made there. And to be honest, Khabib versus Tony Ferguson has been the one damn fight I've been waiting to happen, for years now. I wanted to watch this fight. It keeps falling through. So even though I'd love to see Tony Ferguson fight Conor McGregor, I'm not opposed to seeing him and Khabib duke it out. I think that would be a great fight. And also, If Tony Ferguson beats Khabib, then that really kind of adds to that fight if Conor McGregor does decide to actually fight him afterwards. Or if Khabib beats Tony Ferguson, then you've got the whole chicken thing back in play. So I'd like to see Tony Ferguson fight Conor McGregor in a perfect world, but, to be honest, I'd be fine with seeing Tony Ferguson fight Khabib just because it's such a fun fight. And also, who wouldn't want to watch a third fight with Nate Diaz? I don't know. What about you, Sean?
I think this is Conor McGregor's world, and we're all just living in it, to be honest. And whatever he decides, whatever he decides is going to happen. Like, there's so many fights. I've said it in this show before. It could be GSP, it could be Tony Ferguson, it could be Nate, it could even be Max Holloway. You never know. If Frankie Edgar beats Max Holloway, there's so much. There's been a lot of talk between them. Could be Woodley. There's so many different people. Personally, I'd like to see Tony Ferguson. I think I'd really like to see that fight. I think it'd be fun. I actually think it's a pretty bad matchup for Tony Ferguson, to be honest, because of the way he fights and because of the power McGregor has. And I said it yesterday, I think even Lee would be actually a worse matchup for McGregor. Definitely Habib as well. But I think it'd be definitely the funnest fight of any of those anyway. But which one is he going to pick? It's hard to know. There's another option as well that he doesn't fight again, or he doesn't fight for a good while. He doesn't need to fight. He's 100 million in the bank, and he's someone who's very, concerned with his health and everything like that. He's spoken about it before. It's difficult. I think he's going to wait and see what happens. He's said it 3 or 4 times over the last couple of months that someone needs to establish themselves. Someone needs to make. I don't need to pick my next fight. Someone needs to pick me, and I don't think Tony Ferguson has done that with his performance or with his call out. His performance was good, but I don't think it was enough to get him out of there. And there's a few more fights coming up, but like from. When I'm deciding what fights I want to see next, whether it's DJ, McGregor, Tony, Stipe, whoever, which fight do I think would be the best? And out of all of those names, I think Tony Ferguson will be. I think it'd be a smashing fight. I think it'd be an insane fight for probably 2 rounds until someone gets finished.
And I'm wondering, do you think, we know McGregor's a strategist, do you think he is waiting to see what happens at UFC 217 to see if GSP wins before he makes his decision?
I think he is, yeah. I think he'll wait and he'll let all the dominoes fall, and then he'll pick up whichever one he wants to take home with him, and it may sound insane to think that he could go up to middleweight and fight, but he is an insane man, and anything could happen. That, like, if you're to think about it, what does McGregor want? He has proven that defending belts, coming back and clean out of the division is not something he's concerned with. Now maybe that might change in the future. Maybe he'll come back and he'll fight Ferguson, didn't fight Nate, didn't fight Barboza or whoever next. But that past his prologue, and that's not how he's done it so far. So then you're thinking, who's the biggest money fight, and is that what he's after? And like, is GSP could be that, GSP. I think not just seeing how GSP gets on inside the cage at UFC 217, but seeing what the pay-per-view buys are like. If these pay-per-view buys against Bisping are 700,000-800,000, he could think, put that with my 1.5 million or 2 million or whatever it will be going into his next fight, and you could have, another. You're obviously not going to have McGregor Mayweather again, but you could have something maybe half it and as big as he could possibly get in MMA. So that's definitely an option for him. Nate Diaz is a huge option as well, but I don't think we can rule out GSP just because of the amount of money that could be on the line in that fight.
It's interesting. I was watching an interview with GSP. I think it was with Brett Okamoto, another friend of the show, and I think Brett asked him, like, what do you think about Conor McGregor? What do you think about that fight? And GSP kind of was like, I don't know, kind of acting like I didn't really think about this guy, not on my radar, stock market and all this stuff. But I think with GSP, it's a case where if he calls out Conor McGregor, and he said, like, I've never really called out a lighter guy. I think GSP would love to fight Conor McGregor, but I don't think he wants to call him out because it doesn't really make him look good calling out a light guy. So I think GSP's down for the fight, but he's waiting for Conor McGregor to potentially call him out. But as far as what's next for Ferguson, I don't know, man. Maybe I'm naive, but in a sense, I'm with you, Sean. I want to see the Ferguson fight. We've seen the Nate Diaz fight twice, and like a lot of people have already said, it not only has it been done before twice, but it can be done later on. And I think it makes more sense because not only is Ferguson a more exciting matchup, but if you look at sort of the pros and cons and the worst case scenario, if Conor McGregor fights Nate Diaz and loses, you lose the Ferguson fight, right? Because he's the interim champion. Nate Diaz would become the lightweight champion because, of course, the lightweight belt would be on the line. So then Diaz faces Ferguson. Hey, that's a great fight. And that's a fight that I really want to see at some point. Before I die, I want to see Nate Diaz versus Tony Ferguson. But I feel like if Conor McGregor goes in there, faces Ferguson, best case scenario, he wins, great. He can do Nate Diaz, he can do Khabib, he can do whatever. But if he loses, he can still do the Nate Diaz trilogy. It doesn't lose any luster. And I don't think that... Look, I think if they do fight and there is a lightweight title on the line, I think it makes it a little bit more interesting with Nate Diaz, because it's like, holy shit, for the first time in a long time, Nate Diaz might become a lightweight champion. But I don't think it's really going to equate to pay-per-view buys. So I think it makes a lot more sense for Tony Ferguson to fight McGregor next. Win-lose, you can do McGregor-Diaz next or the fight afterwards. So, and also, what is the point of having an interim belt if you're not even, it's not even going to lead to a title shot? So I think, for the last shred of meritocracy in the sport, it needs to be Ferguson and McGregor, and because it's going to be an exciting fight. I'm curious what you think, Dennis. If they do go Diaz-McGregor 3, which there's a huge, gigantic chance, should McGregor vacate the belt and for it to be a non-title fight? That way, if he loses for whatever reason, he can still swing in there and get a title shot against Ferguson soon down the line.
Yeah, it's an interesting point, and I think almost it's not Conor McGregor stepping down. It's Dana White just saying, hey, look, Tony Ferguson now has the title, but Conor McGregor still carries his titles around like he's the champion.
Yeah.
So it's like he didn't technically lose them, but Dana White kind of forced him to. It's kind of like when a parent makes a kid do something, but the kid's still cool because the parent's kind of like, hey, like, you don't get to do this, but the kid's like, hey, like, it's not my decision. Like, I'm still a badass. So. Yep. It could be one of those situations where I don't think McGregor would willingly give up his title, though, because he does love being champion. He loves having the belt. So Dana White would have to do that, and it would have to almost be a choreographed decision, because I don't think Dana White would risk pissing Conor McGregor off. They'd almost have to decide behind closed doors, hey, you do this way. I have stroke, and this is kind of a backup plan. But the thing with McGregor is I don't think he thinks like that. I think he actually believes, I'm the champion, and I don't think he kind of stooped to that level to do something like that. So I don't think he would vacate the belt. I think this belt means a lot more to him than the featherweight belt did for some reason. I feel like he's really hanging on to this. So I don't think he'll be giving it up. So it's gonna be interesting. And the other big question here is, guys, they have the same management company, Ferguson and McGregor. So that's weird to me as well. How does that play into the negotiations and things coming together? And if you're Audi Attar and you've got these two clients in this fight, you'd think that you'd have the responsibility to be fair and equally service both men. But how can things be equal when Conor McGregor is going to be making that much more money than Tony Ferguson, and Tony Ferguson is going to be looking over at what Audie's done for Conor McGregor and wondering, well, how much money am I going to make? There's going to be a lot of things going into this fight that's going to be really confusing. So, yeah, I don't know. It's going to be a bit of a clusterfuck going into this one, I think.
Sean, I'm wondering, what do you think? Or first of all, what do you think about that? Should the belt be vacated? Not so much will it, because we know it probably won't, but should it be vacated? And also, while we're all talking about Nate Diaz being, the bigger money fight and probably having more casual appeal, Conor's sort of at this point, and I think you've even said this on the show, where he probably doesn't even need a belt to be a draw. And he doesn't really need anything to a draw. He's already a draw. How many more pay-per-view buys do you think McGregor-Diaz would do compared to McGregor-Ferguson? Like, is McGregor-Diaz, in your mind, really that much of a money fight compared to McGregor-Ferguson? Would the UFC really be losing out that much if they went, fuck it, we're doing McGregor-Ferguson instead?
I think they would. I think McGregor's obviously the draw. Look, we all know that. Whatever card McGregor's on, if he's fighting a broomstick, he's gonna be a draw. But I definitely think that Diaz match, like, in the history of combat sports, it's always grudge matches, and that's still a grudge match. Tony Ferguson fight isn't really a grudge match. Just McGregor, I don't think he's ever even mentioned Tony Ferguson. He maybe something small in passing, but there's no grudge there to be a good fight. I definitely think it's a lot bigger of a fight. But yeah, look, it's a very interesting time, because, like, look at Tony Ferguson, like, and talking about this belt, like, he even said, come on, Conor, defend or vacate your belt. Like, you have a belt on your shoulder. Why are you saying that? You should be saying, I'm the champion, I have the belt now. Like, I think there's we talk about Conor McGregor, and I think if Conor McGregor wasn't the champion, he fought Nate Diaz, he'd do the exact same amount of buys he would if he had the belt. I agree totally with Nate Diaz when he says these belts are fairy tales. But you know who should not want Conor McGregor to vacate his belt? Tony Ferguson. Because if Conor McGregor vacates his belt, then Tony Ferguson's not getting that fight. Tony Ferguson should want him to keep that belt as long as he has his belt, so that the hope of that fight is out there. All those people should. Same with Habib. Same with Eddie Alvarez or Barboza or whoever else is out there. Look coming up at lightweight. They should all want McGregor. None of them should want McGregor to vacate the belt, because it's grand being champion. Tony Ferguson was champion last night. What did he get? 370,000. Might he get? He's a couple of a few thousand from pay-per-view buys if he has that in his contract. If he has that in his contract going into McGregor, he's going to be a millionaire out of that. So that's, at the end of the day, that's what these guys are in it for as well. I know it's great. They're doing it for the sporting achievement to get the belt as well, but the cheddar make it better, as Rampage Jackson used to say.
I love it. What a great quote. That's something you can take to the bank. Before we move on, obviously Demetrious Johnson versus Ray Borg, just quickly got to touch on Kevin Lee, just sort of what is next, because it really did feel like a star was potentially about to be born. Of course, he's an interesting guy. He has these outfits. He has this willingness to sort of go out there and be different, wear these crazy outfits. And I feel like, in the future, he's so young. He could potentially, you never know what his ceiling is going to be. He obviously has a lot of things that he needs to change in his camp. And I feel like this loss, I feel like he doesn't lose too much steam. All right, it wasn't the greatest performance, but I feel like everybody and their mother knows, look, he had staph, he had a terrible weight cut, he had a lot of things going against him, and so I don't feel like he loses too much steam. But now the big question is, what is next for him? Because it almost seems like just as he's getting comfortable in the division and we're getting to know him, he might be moving up. He wants a 165 division. UFC are probably not going to do that. And if that doesn't happen, then he's probably going to have to move up to 170. He admitted that he started fighting at lightweight when he was a young guy. He's obviously grown into his frame, and he's probably going to have to be moving up to 170. What do you think, Sean, about Kevin Lee and how he would do at 170 if he had to move there? And what do you think about this issue with, should the UFC implement 165 or 175 weight classes?
I think I'd be okay with a 165 or 162, maybe even weight class, just because there's a need for it there. Now, the whole weight cutting thing, I don't think... I'm yet to be convinced that new weight classes will cause less weight cutting and not more weight cutting, because guys can come down as well as go up. So I don't know. I don't see the logic behind that. I never really bought into this whole Kevin Lee as a starting, to be honest. I didn't really see it. I think he's a fun guy, a funny guy at times as well, but his fighting style, he's a good fighter, don't get me wrong, but his fighting style is not an exciting style. Like if someone told me Tony Ferguson could be that guy, maybe his personality is a bit wacky as well or something, but I think it needs a combination of things, and I just don't think Kevin Lee's there now. I wrote about it and I said it as well when I was coming up to this fight. I think there's improvements coming with him, and as you're talking about his camp and stuff, I think if he maybe even travels around and stuff, gets those improvements in his game, he could be, because I think the personality bit of it is there, or at least could be there, and he took this loss well. How that builds people as well, but his game needs to improve a lot, but it could improve. But I think you definitely need both those things. But there's a thing as well, I think people kind of, they get mistaken that I think the UFC can build a star, but I don't think they can build a superstar. I think a superstar has to be born. You can't build a Ronda Rousey, you can't build a Conor McGregor. They just are them. You need to hit gold with people like them, and you have to have them and then put the stuff behind them to make them who they are, into this global superstar. But I don't think someone who's just there and you're going, okay, this is who I'm pushing out, I'm going to bring them, make them huge. I just don't think that's possible at all. And I think Kevin Lee's at that stage. Up to welterweight, I think there's a lot of good fights there for him. Till and Cerrone are fighting next week. I'd like to see him fight either one of them. I'd love to see him fight Gunnar Nelson as well. I think that could even headline a card over here in Europe. I know he's fought in Northern Ireland before. If you're coming back to Ireland again, Kevin Lee, he talks a lot of shit about McGregor and stuff. Gunnar Nelson, obviously SPG trained. That'd be a good headliner. Bring it over. Have that.
Yeah, that's a great fight, and I'd like to see that too. And I think if he can make weight for the time being and stay in lightweight, I think that may be the smarter decision for Lee, just because the division has a lot less going on in terms of, we've got, Eddie Alvarez fighting Justin Gaethje, and then Tony Ferguson possibly fight Khabib, or maybe Tony Ferguson does get Conor McGregor, but that Khabib fight might still be up for grabs, and maybe Kevin Lee will be in the right spot to maybe even fight Khabib. You just never know. So, whereas with welterweight, you've got all these dudes trying to clamber to the top. Again, things are unclear as to what's going on, but will GSP pop back down there? What's going to happen? But Stephen Thompson's fighting Jorge Masvidal, and there's so many killers in welterweight. Lightweight obviously has a lot of really tough competitors too, but you got some really, really tough dudes right now in the top, I suppose, 8 or so. So I don't know. If I'm Kevin Lee, I'm going to keep on keeping on in lightweight for the time being and maybe try and go for this Khabib fight if Khabib doesn't get Tony Ferguson. But let's talk about the perfection that Sean Seheehan was talking about earlier on in our conversation. That is, of course, Demetrious Johnson's win over Ray Borg. Sean, the finish. Let's start with the finish. Let's do this thing backwards like me at a buffet. Go to the dessert section. The suplex into armbar finish. I mean, this is one of the times where I've really, really enjoyed watching a replay from every possible angle. And every time they showed the replay, I was like, how is this possible? Is this some kind of weird move in WWE 2K18 that they somehow put into the UFC 216 broadcast? What did you think when you saw it?
I thought it was the most amazing thing I've ever seen. I literally sit back and watch Demetrious Johnson fights now in awe, like when my mouth just wide open, gasping at what that man is able to do. And I'd love to say I was surprised, but like, he's just so excellent that nothing that he does could surprise you. You know, he could literally do anything. Like, he could do a flying go-go plata and I wouldn't be surprised. He's just so good like that. I can't even explain how good that was. Like the suplex guy, when he's in the air, catch his arm and then move immediately into the armbar and finish him with it. Like, it was spectacular. And the big thing about this as well, right? If that happened in a prelim, you'd say, oh my God, submission year be up there. Look at that, unbelievable. If that happened, you know, in the UFC in a big fight, brilliant. If it happened in a championship fight, brilliant. It happened on his 11th successive title defense, the most in UFC history, in the 5th round of the fight. That happened. People, Demetrious Johnson's whole career, people haven't given him enough praise, I don't think. Now, if you can't give a man praise for that, the 5th round of the record title defense, he pulled that off.
Yeah.
Like, he's just unbelievable. He's the greatest ever of all time by miles.
I think you summed it up well, and I think you added a lot of gravity to that situation, because Demetrious Johnson, he does that a lot. You know, he did that against Horiguchi. He goes for he's almost known, almost like the king of late fight finishes. And you made a really good point. Like, this isn't just another fight where he's going for, you know, a risky maneuver. And let's be honest, he could have easily cruised to a decision there. Yeah. But he went for it. He went for a risk. It paid off because it was one of the most stunning and amazing submissions we've ever seen. And I think that's a reason to really, really love DJ. And I don't know, to me, especially at the start of that fight, I did feel like the crowd was really getting behind him. There were a little bit of boos sort of towards the middle. And I don't know, like, to me, it's really hard to gauge because I feel like every time Demetrious Johnson fights, there is, it's kind of, I don't feel like this is really different to any other time he's fought, especially after Wilson Hayes, especially after Henry Cejudo. These discussions pop up of, is he the greatest ever? You know, the fans seem sort of into him, at least, you know, the crowd, and everybody's sort of excited, everybody's, got this massive buzz, and then he fights again, and the numbers don't really tell the story that, you know, people are really into him. And the other thing about this card, I will say, apparently it was a pretty low attendance record for UFC 216. I think there was around about 10,000 people. So you got to think that anybody that was there was a hardcore fan, and obviously a very educated fan, and maybe that's the reason why they were so into it. But I guess a crazy... Actually, no, we'll talk about that in a sec. I'm curious what you think, Dennis. Now that DJ holds the record, how much sort of does it do for DJ to keep extending the record and keep racking up wins? Because I guess one of the thoughts is that now that he holds the record, it doesn't really matter whether you have, say, 11 wins or 12 wins or 15 wins. You've already got that label on you that you hold the record. Do you think it does much for him sort of to keep racking up wins? And do you think maybe one day he'll sort of become like an Anderson Silva or Fedor, where people can sort of, you know, he'll become a draw, people will come around just to watch, you know, maybe is this the guy that's going to break his record? Oh, sorry, as in, is this the guy that's going to finally defeat him? That's what I meant.
Well, I'm curious to find out what we're going to be talking about later, Cass. You're kind of teasing something later on, and I'm curious what it's going to be. But before we get to that, yeah, look, I don't think this record's going to do much for him in terms of people wanting to watch him fight. To him, I think it means a lot. You know, he's spoken to all of us about the fact that, you know, this is his aim, this is what he wants to do. So he's at an interesting point in his career now where, and we've all kind of been there where, well, some of us more than others, where we've achieved a goal, and then when we achieve the goal, we're like, well, we've achieved the goal now.
Yeah.
What are we going to do now? Sometimes achieving a goal is almost, it's like a positive feeling, but it's also like you get this lost feeling too. Like, all right, I've achieved it. What do I do now? And he's kind of in that position now where he's like, all right, I've achieved it. I think possibly he'll be like, look, I'll add some more on there. I think there's some positive stuff going on for him in terms of the new management company. It looks like he may be getting paid a bit more money in the future and taken a bit more seriously. And this management company is going to help with that. But I just don't think the record is really going to do much in terms of fans, I suppose, buying his pay-per-views. The Demetrious Johnson effect is like this. It's like he fights, everyone's like, he's amazing, he's the best. And then a week later, everybody just forgets about him, unfortunately. And I think he's still in the same position he always was in, and that is he still needs to find somebody to fight that's going to bring more attention to the fight that people are going to care about more than a Ray Borg or a lot of the other opponents that he's had in the past. He needs a little mini Conor McGregor to come in there and really give him that fight and bring in that trash talk and bring that in. And until he gets that and beats a guy like that, I'm not sure if his draw card's going to get much bigger. But regardless, spectacular performance.
Screw them, people. Screw them. If they don't want to watch Demetrious Johnson, I hate those people. If you don't want to watch Demetrious Johnson, you're an idiot. Straight up. He's the greatest fighter of all time. How can you not want to watch Demetrious Johnson? I really don't understand it.
I'm not sure if we're listening to Sean Seheehan or Dana White here. This sounds like when Dana White's around.
I wish Dana White got as mad as I do.
Well, this is what I wanted to ask, right? This is the theory that I sort of detoured away from. I'm curious to hear your thoughts, Sean. Would DJ be more popular if he was slightly less skilled and his fights were slightly more competitive wars that he overcame? Because at the moment, he's going in there, he's destroying guys. And, like, look, I think we all are on the same page here. We all love watching Demetrious Johnson fight, right? It is a treat. But sometimes, and I think a lot of people sort of resonate with this, sometimes, like when you watch, say, GSP fight, sometimes he takes people down and he's just so dominant, and you know by the 5th round, like, there is no way that this person is going to win. And I think it's a lot more exciting when you see a fight that's completely back and forth and you're sort of on the edge of your seat and you don't really know who's going to win. So if DJ was this guy who, was a little bit less skilled, he was in these back and forth wars, and every time he fought, he overcame a war, do you think he'd be more popular, Sean?
Definitely. Perfection is something people can't, they can't understand, because people,
That's why they don't understand us, Sean.
Exactly. I'm very misunderstood.
That's why they hate our program and say we suck and don't tune in.
But they can't relate to it. Like, people can't relate to perfection. And the thing about MMA as well is, it's a hard sport to understand. You have to be very, very educated to understand all the intricacies of the stuff that he's doing and how good he is actually at MMA. I think it would be. And like, I think the weird thing is as well, and it's true, like if he does need someone as good as him or close to being as good as him to fight him, to elevate him. But the thing about it is that's why he is so good, because there's nobody nearly as good as him. He's not fighting scrubs. Ray Borg is a very, very good fighter. Joseph Benavidez is a tremendous fighter. Yeah. Cejudo, unbelievable fighter. Horiguchi, so good. He makes them look average. He makes them look like they shouldn't be contenders. He destroys them, and that's just how good he is. People talk about John Jones. John Jones doesn't make guys look like he does, and not as bad as he does. John Jones doesn't throw guys up in the air and does a flying armbar from a suplex on him. He's an unbelievable fighter, very, very good. And obviously we can talk about his drug issues as well, which Mighty Mouse has never had any of them, and I think that's important to say as well. But there's a lot of things as to why Mighty Mouse is not popular, and I think a lot of it just it comes from the fact that people are looking at the wrong things, and they're they should be looking at how good he is inside the octagon and nothing else. If they looked at that they'd understand, and that he'd be a star from that alone. But it isn't as simple as that. You don't only have to fight for your dinner, as I said once before. You have to sing for your supper as well. And Demetrious Johnson doesn't have that part of his game together. He doesn't have a huge fan base behind him like someone like a McGregor does, or like the Anderson Silva does with the Brazilian fans, or GSP with the Canadian fans and stuff. He just doesn't have that behind him. And I don't know what much more he can do. He just is what he is. He's the greatest fighter of all time. And if people can't appreciate him for that, they never will appreciate him, I don't think. And it's a shame, really, but they're idiots anyway, and I don't care about them.
That's right. People are dead to us, Sean. So everybody out there like Demetrious Johnson, if you want to be alive to us. Casper, just quickly, what is next for Demetrious Johnson in your books?
I think it's simple. A lot of people are talking about him going up to 135 pounds. It doesn't seem likely at all. I don't have an issue with it. Sergio Pettis is fighting Henry Cejudo. Henry Cejudo looked really, really impressive in his last fight. Absolutely destroyed Wilson Hayes. You can debate all you want whether that was more impressive than the way Demetrious Johnson sort of tired him out after a while and then submitted a BJJ black belt in his, where he is strongest, or Cejudo destroying him, very quickly. But I think it's got all the makings of a rematch around the corner, especially if he can beat Sergio Pettis. If Sergio Pettis wins, then that's the next fight. And the reason is, all these potential super fights at 135, they're not available. Cody and TJ are fighting, in 3 weeks from now. And at UFC 219, you have Dominic Cruz and Jimmy Rivera, and that's already the next fight. If Dominic Cruz wins, he fights the winner. If Rivera wins, then he's going to be fighting the winner of TJ and Cody. So that title's probably going to be booked for, at least, the next 6 months, and who knows how injuries go, and I don't think that anybody's going to be going down a weight class in the meantime. And to be honest, all those fights at 135, I like him. If it's Dominic Cruz and TJ again, I'm happy with that. If it's Cruz and Cody again, I'm happy with that. If Rivera comes in there and fights either TJ or Cody and sort of is some fresh blood, I mean, after beating Dominic Cruz, I think he definitely deserves a title shot. So, and we all know Demetrious Johnson is not going to be going up in weight and fighting a number one contender. He's fighting for the title, or he's not doing anything other than staying in his weight class. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. What do you think, Sean?
Yeah, is that Cejudo Pettis fight official? I know someone reported it, but I don't think the UFC made it official, did they?
You know what? It probably isn't. I think it's been announced, but not officially official. But it's probably going to be official.
I wouldn't do that fight. I'd line him up, I think, for Demetrious, because a lot of people wouldn't agree with me on this, but I don't want to see Demetrious going up. He did that before, and he's just too small. Like, I think Demetrious is closer to 115 pounder than he is to 135 pounder. He's a small guy. He is not big for that division at all. It's a shame to see. It's a shame to see someone that good go up and be defeated by someone just because they're bigger than them, just because they're fighting outside of their weight class. It's easier for guys that are bigger to go up. A guy going from middleweight to light heavyweight, or from even lightweight up to welterweight or whatever. But a guy that small putting on 10 pounds is a whole lot. We saw it with Dominic Cruz, how big he was. Look, they're great fights. The TJ fight, the Garbrandt fight, even the Cruz fight again. They're all great fights. I'd watch all those fights to be brilliant. But I think I was talking about it earlier. Demetrious Johnson is just so great, and that's his division. Let him keep beating guys. The fight I want to see next is Henry Cejudo, to be honest, again, because Henry Cejudo has improved so much. He is a really, really, really good fighter. I actually wouldn't mind seeing Cejudo take on someone else. There's a lot of good guys in that division, not Pettis. I'd like to see Pettis and Cejudo maybe fight against different people, maybe on the same card even, and whoever wins, most impressively fights Demetrious next, something like that. Putting them against each other, I don't think, what happens then? Cejudo wins, he fights Johnson, who's next? Pettis is just coming off of a loss.
Yeah.
It's on. There isn't much more coming up there. Juicy Formiga just got a win there a couple of weeks back. I think he could definitely go in against one of those guys and fight him, and that'd be a good number one contender match. But yeah, look, there's a lot of good fights there for Demetrious Johnson. I think that's who the rematch, as I said, people want to see that. They definitely want to see the TJ and Cody fights as well. But yeah, I think he'll keep going and he'll keep defending in his weight class and just go on and go get to 15, 16 defenses, I reckon.
And just quickly, what is the record for, I think it's most wins or most consecutive wins? Anderson Silva, and it's 16. So
16.
Yeah, 16. So if DJ, if he's already at 11, why not just keep going for that record, and then he can hold both records? And he's probably got a better chance of doing that at flyweight. So I think even another reason to stay at flyweight.
And people talking about as well who could beat it, who could beat that record. I think Chris Cyborg could probably beat it if she wanted to, if she took like 4 fights a year. But other than that,
she won't be there for that long. She'll be gone soon.
Yeah, she's shoving on as well. Yeah, 100%. Yeah, so it's like he could, if he does get another 2 or 3 title defenses even in, that's hard to see that anyone ever beating that, because he is just so much better than all of those people in that division at the moment. And he is definitely a once in a lifetime fighter. He's that good. So yeah, it's hopefully he keeps going on and making that record even bigger.
Well, before we wrap up our UFC 216 chat, we've got to talk about quickly Fabricio Werdum taking on a last-minute opponent change and impressing everybody, but getting the win that everybody expected. Just quickly, what do you guys think this does for Werdum? Because this Werdum wasn't really in the great position in his career. I think he said a bunch of stuff that offended a lot of people. He obviously hasn't looked that great in his last few fights, and a lot of fans were a little bit down on Werdum, a little bit like they were with Anderson Silva before he took that last-minute fight with Daniel Cormier at UFC 200. What do you think him taking this fight, staying on the card, and sort of delivering for the fans sort of does for him, Sean?
I think it might have done a little bit more for him if it went on longer. 65 seconds, it looked like, oh, this guy is just totally out of his league, and he went in and finished him. Like, people are not even going to remember this, even though it was a superb submission and everything.
Him so quickly. What a bastard.
Isn't it weird, though? It's the same with Demetrious Johnson. Like, if he got knocked down and lost the first 4 rounds last night and then did that submission, people would be waxing lyrical about him. It'd be unbelievable, but that's just the way the cookie crumbles, I suppose. But yeah, look, Werdum, if you look at his last few fights, obviously Harris last night didn't Alistair over him. He lost to him. Travis Brown, he beat Travis Brown, and then he lost to Stipe. Like 2-2 in his last couple. I don't think he's getting a title shot at Stipe anytime soon. I think obviously Overeem is fighting Francis Ngannou. The winner of that is probably going to be up there. Kane is coming back. I think Kane and Werdum might make sense now. I know obviously Werdum has a win over Kane, but Kane coming back in there, that could be a big fight for him. But I don't think he's getting the title shot anyway.
You know what? I never actually thought about Kane versus Werdum as an opportunity or as an option. I always kept thinking, when Kane's healthy and returns back to form, it's going to be him versus Stipe. But in the back of my mind, I always thought, but you know what? Like, Kane coming off such a massive layoff and then finding Stipe, that's tough. Actually, Werdum would be perfect because, Werdum's sort of been up and down. Kane coming off this layoff, that's a nice warm-up fight. If he loses, well, that sucks. But at least, Werdum kind of gets he moves closer to his goal, which is a title shot. But that's a fight that I've been wanting to see a rematch of at sea level since the very first fight.
100%.
So I'm down with that.
Like, Kane has only fought once since that fight in 2015. Like, he fought at UFC 200 against Travis Brown and looked great. But, like, it's such a shame. Like, Cain Velasquez is it's just one of those great stories that he could have been an unbelievable fighter. Like, he was a guy kind of a little bit like Demetrious Johnson, who was so much better than a lot of those guys. Like, he got the only losses he's had in the UFC are, a quick knockout against Junior Dos Santos, and that one against Werdum when he looked out of shape and just coming back off of what was it, almost 2 years out as well. It's such a pity seeing him there. But look, for Werdum, we were talking about it actually last week on the podcast about him. He could be the best heavyweight of all time, and I suppose that's something he said too. He has that win over Ken, he has that win over Fedor, and that's going to get him. Yeah, exactly. That's going to get him. That's going to get him big fights. So I'd never rule him out, but it's tough to see at the moment with guys like Francis Ngannou obviously coming up there. If he beats Overeem, there's no denying him. I think he's 100% getting Stipe next.
Yeah, and I guess the thing that's going for Werdum is there's just such a lack of options in the heavyweight division that when they run through everybody that could possibly fight Stipe, they'll probably have no choice if Werdum is in a decent spot to give him a shot anyway. So I guess we'll see what happens there. I do like that Kane fight, and we'll see what the future holds for Derek Lewis, who didn't look like he was exactly 100% into this fight. I saw some pre-fight interviews, and he was obviously busy helping out a lot of people, doing a lot of stuff, and it looked like his mind was all over the place going in there. So I don't think the UFC are going to be demoting him in terms of giving him crappy fights because he's still a big draw in the heavyweight division. But I'm just curious what the future holds for his back and his fighting career as well. But quickly, before we wrap up, guys, let's give our thoughts on the GSP Bisping press conference that went down this weekend as well. GSP wore a nice suit. I don't know. Actually, I don't think I liked his suit. It was a little bit. It wasn't what I expected. I've got to go back on that because people are going to hold me that on record. I was a little bit like, what is this? An old man feeding ducks at the park? Like, get a different kind of suit. But anyway, let's talk about what they actually spoke about. Michael Bisping was on fire yet again, Casper, and GSP. Well, he was there. What did you think of the conference?
GSP's never been known as much of a talker, so I don't hold it against him for not really.
He got a bit angry at times, it seemed.
See, here's the thing. Like, I think a lot of people see GSP as getting angry and Michael Bisping pushing his buttons. I don't know. I don't. Look, I think there was some mild frustration, but I don't think GSP was as pissed as a lot of people thought. Like, when they faced off, they came face to face. And then Bisping sort of flicked GSP's collar on his suit. GSP didn't really react. He didn't seem to care. And then when he grabbed him by the bicep, I know GSP pushed him back, but it didn't seem like I'm fucking furious pushback. It seemed like, all right, guy, just back off, all right? Just go away kind of thing. And I think, like, GSP, we all know the story. He got into martial arts because he was bullied. And he, apparently, according to his stories, he never backed down from these bullies. So I think to him, this is another situation. We saw Josh Koscheck bullying GSP on The Ultimate Fighter. So this is kind of something that GSP's gone through his whole career. He doesn't have the greatest English, doesn't have the greatest vocabulary. He's not as, zappy on the mic as, say, McGregor or Bisping. And this is, you're entering Bisping's world. When you go to a press conference, this is Bisping's world. And it's good that Bisping does this because, it's going to sell the fight and, hopefully it sort of boosts up the pay-per-view buys. I'm not expecting to do over 1 million, but, I thought Bisping was on fire. I'm just a bit surprised that he's really, really pouring on these steroid accusations. He sort of started off tiptoeing about it. I think he was on Conan, and he sort of retracted it. It was like, no, I wasn't saying he was on steroids. And then, now this is his kind of thing. This is the gimmick for this fight. Bisping accusing GSP of steroids. So yeah, fun press conference. What do you think, Sean?
Yeah, I thought it was okay. I always think it's good when Bisping is on because Bisping is just great crack. Like, let's be honest here, and it'll be a shame when he's gone. Look, I think GSP likes when they're both kind of like when there's a bit of needle between the two guys. Like Bisping loves it. He creates it almost all of the time in his fights. GSP used to love it. With Nick Diaz, he really, really wanted that fight. I think GSP, he said himself he gets obsessed with things, and I think he's kind of getting obsessed a little bit with Michael Bisping. That's going to drive him on in training and stuff like that. The press conference, as I said, it was just kind of Bisping taking goals at him, George answering back pretty badly. Obviously, his quote was like, "Fire is hot, water is wet, and I'm going to beat Michael Bisping." Something like which made absolutely no sense. But it was just, it was absolutely hilarious.
I thought that was pretty good for GSP standards. I was like, yeah, that's going to be a fucking headline, and then it was. I was like, you go, GSP. I thought surely
I was like, water is
headline.
wet? Unbelievable. I always thought it was dry. Nah, it was good. It was a good chat there from GSP. And, to me, Sean and Casper, it's kind of like, GSP is really the ultimate winner here because he got himself into this fight with Michael Bisping. I truly believe in his heart he thinks he could pretty dominantly beat Michael Bisping. This is a fight that he thought, hey, this is a fight I could win if I could get in here somehow. This is going to be a great fight for me to return on. He knows he's going to make a bit of money in this fight, and he's fighting for the middleweight title even though he's not a middleweight. So even though these press conferences may not go his way, I think deep down inside, just the fact that he's not fighting Tyron Woodley and fighting Michael Bisping instead, like, you'd be pretty wrapped. Plus, you're fighting at Madison Square Garden. How could you not be happy? So Bisping's going to say his stuff, but I think GSP, is probably the ultimate winner in this situation, just being in this fight. And Bisping's a huge winner too, getting GSP. So I think everybody at the end of the day is going to be happy, and they'll probably do a Josh Koscheck post-fight hug or something. And no, we always loved each other in the back kind of situation. So we have that to look forward to. But guys, again, a big thanks for tuning into this program. We will be back to our usual midweek format from next week onwards. A big thank you to Sean Seheehan for coming onto the program. Of course, Severe MMA is the place to be. So if you listen to Submission Radio, we expect you to also listen to Severe MMA. It's must listen every week. Also, make sure to follow Sean on Twitter at Sean Seheehan BA. The Twitter account always has classic gold, Sean. I don't know who writes. I don't know if you pay the writers from Conan to write on it half of the time when they're not working on the show, but I like it. I dig it. It's very, very funny. Also, a big thanks to other guests on the program this week, Owen Roddy, for taking the time out after a crazy weekend celebrating a 30th to join us. The voice was going near the end, but the heart was strong, and he stuck around to the end. We really appreciate that. What about this? Stephen Thompson checking in from a wedding. He walked away and possibly lost his only meat option to a vegetarian option. He's probably back there eating some salad, cursing our names, but he was great on the program. We really appreciate it. And Johny Hendricks, with a change of camp, he sounds like he's back in action and thriving again. Excited to see him at UFC 217 as well. A big UFC 217 feel here, Casper, on the program. And to all you guys tuning in, thanks for tuning in. Have a great week, and we'll catch you next week.